Gentlemen No Class is proud to be a part of the HC Universal Network. Gentlemen No Class is produced, mixed, and edited by M5 Studios.
This podcast contains explicit language and is intended for adult audiences. The views and opinions of Gentlemen No Class are strictly for comedic purposes and should not be taken literally. For instance, like this disclaimer. Now grab yourself a pint and enjoy.
Welcome to another episode of Gentlemen No Class, a podcast. And when the going gets weird, the weird turn pro. Did you hear that popping P that I just did? No? I hope you can edit that out. I'm Jake.
Oh, I'm special guest, Ryan the Hitman Landrum.
Yeah, I guess you are an M, Paul.
I'm Rob.
And like it or not, gentle ladies and you gentlemen, we are the hosts of this podcast. This very strong, podcast that we're going to have.
You need a thesaurus, is what
Did you
need.
say?
You're running out of fucking descriptive words. You're running out of adjectives.
I am running out.
Get you a dictionary and hit you over the fucking head with
It's this
it.
hot beer that I'm drinking, actually.
Oh, man. That's what happens when you buy that shit at Circle K.
Yeah, well, no one else brought beer.
I did. He doesn't drink it.
I really don't really drink.
Oh, you don't drink beer?
Loser. Yeah,
I
no.
don't. I really haven't been. This is kind of my thing.
Oh.
lately,
Ever
so,
since he's gun shy since the DUI, so.
kind of. Well, yeah,
Nah,
they really stopped me afterwards, but I
Gun
just
shy, responsible, tomato.
yeah, same shit.
Potato,
Dicks out.
meat and potatoes. Yeah.
Yeah, Rob's favorite thing.
Meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a very touchy podcast episode that we're going to have, and Rob, you want to
Yeah,
roll
so
with that?
we talked about last podcast episode that we wanted to do have a discussion about the 9/11 about 9/11 and the 9/11 conspiracy and things like that. Yeah, my shoes are off. You can talk into the microphone.
hobo.
Oh, you were on it. You
Fucking shoe moccasins.
you were rocking and rolling, man. I didn't want
man,
to stop you. I just look over and I see your bare feet. I'm
Did
like,
you
what is
make
going
those
on,
shoes, or
man?
did you custom those in the back? They look like they got no support.
Those are Sanics, bro. Those are canvas
I
top.
don't know
These are
what
like,
that means.
These are like $50 or $60, man. These are expensive. That's
good.
super comfortable.
Do you
I guess.
always podcast with bare feet?
No, I
This
just
is new. This is freaking
Is
me
it?
the fuck
Okay.
out too.
I've been working really hard and like my feet hurt at work.
That doesn't
so
mean
I've
you
been
deserve
wearing
to
them.
show 'em
These are
off.
like,
That's cool.
hey man, I live here. I can take my fucking shoes off.
Damn straight.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean you have to do it in front of me.
They're not in front of you.
Hey, as long as
What
they're
if
not
one of
stinky.
us gets
No,
hard?
It's the white
think about
privilege. That's
that?
all it is. That's all it is. So just let it be, Paul. You're not
Every
going to win.
episode, every
You're not going to
episode.
win. Just let it be, man. It's okay.
Look,
You gotta bring it up. I'll
Look, tuck
take
your
up.
ponytail back up underneath your hat and let's get on with the fucking episode.
I'll give you a ponytail.
Podcast is gonna be divided.
Where are you going to give me a
everybody.
ponytail?
Got people
on what?
Two guys with ponytails.
So that's what this podcast
Two
is
guys
about.
Rob, where's your ponytail?
And two guys with retirement plans.
Okay. Is that based on hairlines?
Damn.
Oh, wow.
We are taking cheap
Hey, dude,
shots here.
bro.
He's got a dude, bruh. Anyway,
Back on
that
track,
one.
baby.
before we get to the topic of the podcast,
Yes.
there's a lot of current events we need we need to hit on.
Okay. I think we're gonna do that, but
Can I hit on one thing real quick?
Yeah,
That
go
happened
ahead.
actually yesterday. It's in the city of Houston at the church I got married at.
yes, my dad told me this morning. It's
Did that
fucking
happen?
Crazy.
I was at the church I got married at. Yeah.
Oh, that guy got shot or shot his
And we
wife.
filmed.
A 60-something-year-old guy shot his wife and his 31-year-old daughter. There was a baby inside. She was not harmed, but the wife died, and the daughter was
Oh,
in
my
critical
God.
condition. They had a standoff this morning at a motel,
Yeah.
and he ended up killing himself. But
Oh,
geez.
really? I didn't hear
He
about
ended up
all
killing
that.
himself, yeah.
Yeah, what was like a month ago we filmed there?
Oh, yeah, we shot a wedding there,
That's
and that was
so
in
crazy,
the middle
man.
of
Like-
November.
What
Yeah.
church was that?
Christ the Redeemer.
Yes.
You said he was 60?
He was in his 60s.
How
yeah.
old was she?
She was, the mother was probably, I'm assuming, the same age, but the daughter was 31 years old.
Okay.
Oh,
And then there's also a baby in the
Oh,
car,
okay.
but I'm assuming it's the daughter's baby, maybe. Didn't mean for that to rhyme.
Baby
Oh,
on
the baby was
board,
in the car. She wasn't pregnant with the baby.
No, the baby was in the
okay.
car. The baby was fine. The daughter's in critical condition, and the mother died. Dude,
Wow.
It's crazy,
Man,
man.
that's terrible.
Did they say why? Like, was there?
A domestic dispute, I assume. I don't know.
Push
But
him
yeah.
to the limit.
He was the ex-husband, wasn't he?
I don't know. I know that they
I
were
heard
going over there for
estranged ex-husband.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Well, maybe so, man.
What?
It's okay.
I thought you just heard this now.
Woo.
Rob.
I didn't know. I didn't know that was the church he got married at. I had heard the story. I didn't know that it was.
Okay.
There was a personal
All
connection.
right, just gonna there every now and then.
Well, that's the local news that I have.
Did you see this Instagram post that our boy Tom DeLonge put out
No, what
shit.
happened?
about the fucking? It's
Is it legitimate or is it like
it
crazy
says
talk?
it says hashtag Secret Machines, A Fire Within by Tom DeLonge and AJ Hartley out now. And
Another
it's
book?
I guess so. It's a picture of a fucking UFO.
I remember he talked about that when he was on
Joe
Rogan's
Rogan.
Joe
podcast.
Rogan. Yeah. So apparently, like,
It begins.
apparently it begins. So
Didn't
Well,
he say
he already
something
had a
like
book
this
out though,
year?
called Selkies or something like that. I forgot.
Didn't he say something that he's going to reveal like some kind of technology later this year? Or
Yeah,
was it-
apparently
or
about
next
something
year?
about some, I guess
hovercraft technology or some
something like that,
bullshit.
Yeah. Some
How they
bullshit.
can go the light, the speed of light, or something. I don't
That's
know,
what-
but yeah, he has the knowledge for that, or something. I don't know.
Any thoughts on that, Ryan? Yourself?
I'm sorry,
Are we alone?
Just on this.
Is the truth out there?
It is my friend. It's out there.
It's out there somewhere.
Seek and you shall find. Right here at Gentleman No Class.
All right. I just bet on Tom
Yeah, there you
DeLonge's
go, man.
wild ideas.
I like that.
and-
We're gonna use that as a bumper now for the beginning of this podcast.
So one of the other things, did y'all watch the Spider-Man Far From Home trailer?
No,
Yes.
I haven't yet.
Oh, we gotta
it
watch
looks
that.
good, dude.
It looks
oh my
legit.
god.
So there's a lot of people who are like conjecturing, like, well, this goes to prove that everybody comes back after Avengers, like everybody's after Infinity
Timeline's
War,
different.
But
yeah.
they said
Well, but Kevin Feige said earlier, before Infinity War, he said that Spider-Man Far From Home takes place minutes after Avengers Endgame.
Looks like it takes place in the Middle East.
It takes place in London.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
What, just because of the sand? It takes place in the Middle East?
That could be Cuba, Arizona,
I think
too,
I saw a
motherfucker.
rap. Someone wearing a wrap.
Did you say Raph?
a rap? Well, yeah, rap.
Yeah.
Too. Yeah.
Raph can't afford to go over there. Come on.
Hear that, Raph? He took a stab at you.
He's not here to defend himself, so...
He will be one day. He'll be very
no, but-
defenseless.
So, like, I posted something the other day that, like, somebody's conjecturing that Spider-Man Far From Home takes place minutes after Avengers Endgame, but before Infinity War. Kind of like, so, like, that's the conjecture of the time travel. And that's why Nick Fury is like, you're all alone. Like, why is Spider-Man having to fight these, this big battle by himself? Where's Captain America? Where's Iron Man? Iron Man's always, like, right behind him. Why isn't Iron Man there helping him? Like, maybe Iron Man's dead,
So you said before Infinity War?
Yeah.
So
Like, maybe after Endgame,
Yeah,
like,
that's
the
a mind
timeline
trip.
resets
Yeah.
or something. You know what I mean? And that's,
Oh, wow,
I don't know. It's
gonna
going to be a fucking,
Matrix,
yeah.
like a motherfucker.
It's going to be a big mind fuck.
It'd be like
is what's
Donnie
gonna be.
Darko, but in Marvel.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell just happened?
And Jake Gyllenhaal's in it.
Jinx,
it all
motherfuckers.
makes sense.
Yeah, so...
so what was the old Mysterio? Like he was flying around.
Yeah,
I'm
so
like, can he
Mysterio's
do that?
well, he's always been he's a stuntman and a special effects genius. So my theory is that he's creating these elemental attacks and acting like a superhero, like, you know what I mean, like to fight them as a distraction from something else, or either to make himself seem like a superhero so that he can get in good and like, maybe like rob somebody, because he's a thief is really what he was in the comics. And like there was one comic where he fooled Spider-Man into thinking he had shrunk him to like 6 inches tall, but like Peter like figured it out, like because he's knows physics like really well, so he figured out like something's not right. But like that's the way Mysterio operates. He's like special effects, like smoke and mirrors kind of thing. So like maybe he's creating all these like as special effects to kind of distract, like maybe he has a gang like robbing a bank while he's fighting off all these, like in The Incredibles, the syndrome, was, oh, I'm the hero. I created this thing that only I can beat, and he seems like the hero, but he's really the villain, kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, because the Elementals were such small, minor characters.
yeah. So the other
Like-
thing somebody else came up with online was with each one of them could correlate to an already known Marvel villain. Electro Man as the Lightning Storm, Sandman, Hydro Man and Molten Man. Those could be the 4. I mean, those are already Spider-Man Marvel villains that could like each one of the quote unquote elementals could be, you know, one of those. So, you know, we'll have to see. I mean, we've got like, what is it, like 48 days, 45 days till Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I'm counting down. All right.
Are you more excited about Marvel, guys? Are you more excited about Marvel or Far From Home?
I'm more excited about Endgame, but I'm more excited about Captain Marvel. Like,
Definitely the next
I don't know how
facet.
to feel about about Far From Home because I really don't know what happens in Endgame.
Exactly.
That's going to be
That's
the big thing for me. You know what I mean? Like if Endgame turns out like super lame and like then like I'm not going to be like stoked about anything. But I don't think it can.
Dude, they've built up so much cachet with what the Russo brothers and just the universe in general and Feige and all that. Like, it's going to be good, man.
It's got to be.
It's going to be good.
Infinity War delivered. I think this is going to deliver.
Yeah, I feel like Endgame is going to be completely different than Infinity War, though. Like, they're going to be two separate. Like, Infinity War was about the spectacle of seeing all the superheroes together.
But they weren't together. If you think about it, they were together in the same movie, but they weren't all together at the same time.
I know, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you're seeing, what was it, 30-something superheroes together. You know, it's different points, interactions that you've never seen in any movie before.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, whereas this game, this movie is going to be about just the core.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's going to be an interesting take on things. You know what I mean? That's going to be, I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out with all
I just got to make a comment.
Yeah.
Ryan, you have a very radio-friendly voice.
Yes, you do.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There you,
I don't know.
that thank you was
That
just
thank
amazing.
you was like, oh, dang.
Yeah, I sound like fucking shit already, but man, you just make it sound even fucking worse for me. That simple thank you is like,
y'all are buttering me up for what's going to come.
No,
later on
no,
in this
no,
podcast, aren't you?
no,
Like, I
we're
know
not
it's
gonna bring
coming,
you
man.
down.
It's like, God.
So
We're gonna strike you down.
this is not going to be.
Gently.
Anybody else have any other current events? Any other?
Bill
Glass
Cosby,
came out.
probably alive still.
Netflix Punisher season 2.
That launched already. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
and-
out. Anybody
damn.
anybody touched on that yet? Got
No,
around
I
to
didn't,
it?
even-
but
I didn't
not
even know
yet.
that.
I haven't finished
Oh,
Daredevil season 3
Ghostbusters
yet.
teaser for 2020.
Oh yeah,
You see that?
And it's
That-
the original cast.
Yes,
hold
that
on.
teaser
Minus Harold
alone
Ramis.
Yeah, right.
was way better than the
Bill
whole
Murray
fucking
is part of this? Like,
that 2016 whatever.
I think Bill Murray and
remake.
Dan Aykroyd are part of
Really?
it. Yeah.
I missed it. What?
The Ghostbusters
there's
3
a-
teaser
there-
trailer?
Yeah,
Oh, no
2020. Yeah, the teaser alone is just far superior than the movie that came out recently, like 2 years ago. Whatever.
you think that's going to
years
intersect at all?
No.
Or is it
God
gonna go-
forbid.
No, I don't
hopefully
think they're
not.
going to be in the same
No,
universe.
you don't think it's going to be a reference or anything?
See who it said Jason Reitman. Is that what is he related?
Jason Ramis?
No, Reitman or Ivan
Jason Reitman?
Is that-
Ivan Reitman?
Is that his son?
I don't know.
Or
Who's?
Well, no, I'm sorry. Well, because that's who it says it's being directed by. I believe the name. I'm looking at it real
Well,
quick.
Harold Ramis
Yeah,
was Egon.
Right?
He's
no.
dead.
But I thought Ivan Reitman wasn't he the director of the original Ghostbusters?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, that's a good
you have to
question.
look that up.
I'm gonna look it up real
Interesting.
quick.
There you go.
So,
Yeah,
while
keep
you're
going.
looking that up,
Yeah.
we'll kind of segue that into our podcast topic for tonight. I don't know how long this is going to go, but I feel like it's going to go for a while. We talked about last podcast. We've been wanting to do an episode on 9/11 conspiracy theories, and as we talked about outside of the episode, like how we were going to handle this and how we were going to come about this without sounding like pompous assholes. Interject, Paul.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, it is Ivan Reitman, and his son is Jason Reitman.
And Jason Reitman's directing the new one.
Let me
Should have
see,
found
it says
that up
right there,
already,
right
Paul.
there,
You're slacking here. Marty McFly. Slacker.
Slacker. Yes, Ghostbusters 3, 2020.
Nice.
His
So
son. So yeah.
anyway,
cool.
that's going to be a good one.
yeah.
So anyway, transitioning into
Take
this,
that, Paul Feig. Sorry, I made an enemy.
Kevin
already.
Feige. Is that who you said?
Never mind, forget it. I already made an enemy. You know what I'm talking about, Brian? Yeah. Yes.
No, I don't.
So
Yeah, okay.
Heavyweight?
But I'm laughing. At
Yeah,
it.
yeah, but no, he's gonna hate me now.
So, anyway.
because
I made
he
an
knows
enemy.
you. He knows
Fuck.
you.
our new
I like Paul Feig in heavyweights.
I'm listening to you, Rob. It's okay.
only one of us is.
Yeah.
Anyway, so our topic for tonight, we're going to talk about 9/11. we're going to talk about raising questions. We're not going to talk about who is behind it. We're not going to. I don't want to try to get into the whole. There's a lot of like who did it, why did it, was it an inside job? Why did it happen? There's a lot of things. I would like to talk about the facts of the day and talk about what doesn't make sense, what happened on the official report, what each one of us believes, and what each one of us has done in our own kind of private research. And we brought my best friend Ryan on the show today. Like, I reached out to him because I thought that he would be a nice, cool level head that's not super into conspiracy theories, and have basically a juxtaposition viewpoint from the rest of us, or from at least from most of us. Maybe not all of us. I think there may be some stuff that we agree on. There may be some stuff that we don't agree on, but I'd like to kick this episode off with a quote. I'm going to quote Fahrenheit 451, Ray Bradbury, which was on my nerd quote of the day calendar actually yesterday, so it's kind of fitting.
Okay, cool.
We need not to be let alone. We need to be really bothered once in a while. How long is it since you were really bothered about something important, about something real?
Yeah, that's very fitting, man.
So, talking about 9/11, it pushes a lot of buttons, because it's hard to have a discussion with somebody about it without getting emotional. And that's a very, very difficult thing to do, is to not have an emotional conversation with somebody about it. To have a conversation about it and not feel like you're attacking someone personally, and without attacking or disrespecting the thousands of Americans that lost their lives that day, because nobody is debating that happened. I think what the core of this episode is going to be is questioning the narrative that has been handed to us as the official account of what happened. I think that that's what we want to talk about, what the official account of what happened, and talk about how we feel about that, and the answers that the officials, government, whatever, have given us
based on a 9/11 Commission report.
Based on the 9/11 Commission report, which is the American government. They commissioned the 9/11 Commission, and it took them 7 years, I forget how long it was, to publish the 9/11 Commission report. So that's we're kind of basing it on that, and we're using there was an article published in Popular Mechanics magazine where they kind of debunked a lot of the 9/11 conspiracy theories. So we're going to kind of use that as it was a good outline of kind of the major bullet points of things that were questionable of the day, or I should say that people tend to question more often than not. Okay,
fair enough.
Is that a fair enough statement across the board?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Let's get it
So,
rolling.
But before you jump into that, do you just kind of want to, like, I did not know a ton about it before you asked me, hey, dude, do you want to be a part of this podcast? We're going to be talking about 9/11.
And you're here?
And I'm here, dude. I'm here 2 weeks later. And so, I researched. I have researched. I promise. I will say something. But there's some, like, basic facts.
Okay.
Indisputable stuff.
How about I go through the timeline of the day?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Do the timeline.
So we'll start off with the timeline of the day. So, major events. These are undisputed facts. You can argue. We can get into this later, but major events of the day. So it starts off 7:59 a.m. American Airlines Flight 11, which is a Boeing 767, departs 14 minutes late from Logan International Airport in Boston, bound for Los Angeles International Airport. Five hijackers are aboard. 8:14 a.m. United Airlines Flight 175, a Boeing 767 carrying 56 passengers and 9 crew, departs 14 minutes late from Logan International Airport in Boston, bound for Los Angeles. 5 hijackers are aboard. So at that point, we know that we have planes that are flying coast to coast, a lot of fuel.
Right, yeah.
Okay?
Birds are in the air.
At 8:14, Flight 11 is hijacked over central Massachusetts. That's the original flight. That's 15 minutes into the flight. The flight is hijacked over central Massachusetts, turning first northwest, then south. 8:20, American Airlines Flight 77, a Boeing 757, departs 10 minutes late from Washington Dulles International, bound for Los Angeles. 5 hijackers aboard. 8:42. United Airlines Flight 93, a Boeing 757, departs 42 minutes late from Newark International Airport, which is in New Jersey, bound for San Francisco International Airport. 4 hijackers are aboard. So these are all cross-coastal airlines. So we're talking airplanes full of 8 to 10,000 gallons of jet fuel. Okay. 8:42 to 8:46 approximately, Flight 175, which is the flight that left from Boston headed for Los Angeles. Flight 175 is hijacked above Northwest New Jersey, about 60 miles northwest of New York City, continuing southwest briefly before turning back to the northeast. 8:46 a.m., Flight 11 crashes into the north face of the North Tower, which is One World Trade Center, of the World Trade Center complex, between floors 93 and 99. The aircraft enters the tower intact. That's disputable. That's not a. We'll take that as fact at this time.
And just to clarify, that's about 50 minutes after it took off.
So Flight 77 was hijacked. Flight 11 crashes into the north face. Flight 11 took off at 7:59.
Yeah.
And it crashed at 46 minutes.
Okay.
So 46 minutes flight time. It crashes into the north face.
8:56. I got
8:46.
8:46.
8:46.
8:56. Some of these timelines are different. I checked different ones.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So 8:50 approximately, Flight 77 is hijacked above southern Ohio, turning to the southeast. 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 crashes into the south face of the South Tower, which is 2 World Trade Center of the World Trade Center complex, between floors 77 and 85. 9:28, Flight 93 is hijacked above northern Ohio, turning to the southeast. 9:37, Flight 77 crashes into the western side of the Pentagon, and anyway. 9:40. There's a couple of points of opinion in these. I'm trying not to state.
Of course. The facts, baby.
9:37, Flight 70. Okay, sorry. 9:45 a.m. The United States airspace is shut down. They've grounded all flights at this point.
Right.
9:59. The South Tower of the World Trade Center collapses, which is 56 minutes after the impact of Flight 175. Now, mind you, this is the South Tower. This is the second tower that got hit, first tower down.
Right.
10:03 a.m., Flight 93 is crashed by its hijackers as a result of fighting in the cockpit into Pittsburgh and Somerset County. Blah, 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 blah. There's some conjecture about some things. 10:28 a.m., the North Tower of the World Trade Center collapses 1 hour and 42 minutes after the impact of Flight 11. There's a Marriott hotel located at the base of the 2 towers. It's also destroyed. 10:50 a.m., 5 stories of part of the Pentagon collapse due to the fire. 7 hours later, at 5:20 p.m., 7 World Trade Center, a 47-story building, collapses. Okay. So that's a timeline of events.
Right.
So, and just the Tower 7 thing, I didn't even remember that. So that's why I think it's important to point that out. Like, a lot of people may not know that, who haven't looked into it. There was a third tower, Tower 7,
that collapsed.
That collapsed. Yeah.
So
hours later.
Yeah, seemingly for no reason. So, a little history lesson on the World Trade Center towers, which is public knowledge. This is fact. We're just going to state some facts. I may not state them exactly or how they're written down on paper, but just some facts. The World Trade Center towers were built as modern marvels, basically. They were built with a rigid steel frame on the outside, and a lot of the support columns were moved to the center core of the building, and the other ones were moved to the outer shell of the building, making it so that you could have large areas of open space.
Right.
Okay.
So it looked like a donut.
Oh,
it
yeah,
looked like a donut.
Basically. So think of like a tube within a tube. Is how the building was
construction.
It's how it was set up. Each floor was metal trusses suspended by metal truss girders suspended by hangers from the inner and outer core, 110 stories tall.
Right.
The problem with the World Trade Centers was in the 1970s it was built at building code standards, and there was a lot of asbestos in the buildings. This is common fact. The New York the New York Port Authority who is in charge. Those are on the southern tip of Manhattan Island. So the Port Authority is in charge of those buildings. They had a lot of issue because the buildings needed updating. They were a prime real estate in Manhattan, but anytime you had to remodel anything, it was super costly because of asbestos removal. Okay. The Port Authority knew this. They were looking at millions, if not billions of dollars of renovations of these buildings that they did not have the money to invest to get these buildings cleaned up and up to code.
So they weren't up to code.
They were not up to code. Well, they were to a point. Any new construction, anytime anything had to be renovated or fixed, you had to bring in asbestos removal crews. Right. There were tons of, we're not talking about just asbestos fireproofing. We're talking about asbestos pipe insulation. We're talking about asbestos floor tiles. We're talking tons and tons of asbestos that we're talking that are, we're talking quotes that were in the millions and billions of dollars that the Port Authority got to renovate these buildings to fix this issue. It is worth noting that the person who took care of this financial problem for the Port Authority was a man by the name of Larry Silverstein. Larry Silverstein signed a 99-year lease on both Trade Center towers and World Trade. He already had a lease, and either had a lease or owned, I'm not entirely sure, on World Trade Center 7, the other tower that collapsed. He signed a 99-year lease and took out a $3.5 billion insurance policy on each tower, and for total demise of the towers. Okay, and this was 6 weeks before the 9/11 attacks.
Where's this guy at now?
This guy is alive and well, basking in the glow, because he owns that real estate that those towers were built on. So the Freedom Tower,
he's flexing.
Freedom Tower. Larry Silverstein owns. Okay, that it's built on ground zero.
He just got a few $1 billion more.
Yeah. I was gonna backtrack a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just when you were talking about like the structural integrity and the way it was built, I was just wanted to give a quote. Like I don't know if people know this, but there's a gentleman of what's it called. He was the on-site construction manager for the World Trade Center. His name is Frank A. I think I can't pronounce his last name. D. Martini. I could be wrong, but he said it himself. He said not only were the towers were designed to survive crashes of a large jet aircraft, but they were designed to potentially survive multiple plane crashes. He says the building was designed to have a fully loaded 707 crash into it. That was the largest plane at the time.
Exactly.
I believe that building probably could sustain multiple impacts of jetliners because this structure is like the mosquito netting on your screen door. This intense grid, and the jet plane is just a pencil puncturing through that screen netting. It really does nothing to the screen netting. That's how strong this thing was designed and built on. And you can look it up too. There is a documentary that came out in January of 2001, 9 months before 9/11 happened. The same guy I'm quoting, he's pretty much what I quote from a Modern Marvels episode of History Channel that is no longer available after 9/11, but before it was. And you can look it up on YouTube. I just found it. I couldn't believe it. I watched like 20 minutes into it, and it's really good. I want to finish watching it again, but I encourage you to look it up and for yourself. And
interesting.
It's out there. Because I believe it was in the 40s, or a plane struck the Empire State Building.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why they had the intentions when they designed this building to prevent that. If that was to happen.
Right. So the guy who designed the World Trade Centers even said that they built in a 15 to 16 time redundancy in that building. So if you think about this core within a core, this donut, tube within a tube structure, the biggest thing is that 40% of the load of the buildings was carried on the outside and 60% on the inside. The way these were connected was by this huge, what they call a hat truss, that encapsulated the upper 1 to 2 stories of the building. And it was this interconnected, grid system of girders and trusses that connected the inner core to the outer core. This was supposed to help a lot of, give the building rigidity and its strength. So because by moving, most high-rise skyscrapers are built with the columns, equally spaced apart. So by moving them to where they were moved to, there was a couple of things that they had to take into account to make up the structure. So that's why these big hat trusses were put on the top of the buildings. And buildings, these giant skyscrapers are made to sway in the wind, and things like that. They're not supposed to be rigid structures. And there's even accounts of the day of guys that were in their offices, 10, 15 stories below where the planes hit, and they felt the building get hit and sway. And their account is when it swayed back, like that's, you could feel the sway back. So, I mean, the building was designed to take a hit from a plane because, like you said, before that, like a plane had already hit the Empire State Building once. So, and that was an accident.
Yeah.
So that was the designer of the World Trade Centers even said he designed them to withstand the impact of a 707. But it is worth noting that a 707 is quite a significantly different plane than a 767.
But
you're talking 5,000 gallons of fuel less.
But I looked at that too. But they said the impact of the 707 is actually greater than a 767. I forget the actual numbers. I should have wrote them down. But as they said, 767 is lighter compared to 707 to impact wise. And this is based on This,
but I mean, we're talking about. I don't know that now. The other thing that's worth noting is they're saying that the World Trade Center was designed to withstand the impact of a 707, but at what speed?
That's a good question.
You know what I mean? Because the planes that struck the towers were going 2 to 3 times their maximum allowable speed for that altitude.
I heard it's 500 miles per hour.
Yes.
Yeah,
right?
but the thing is,
there's.
At 500 miles an hour, at 500 feet above sea level, pilots say that for 2 minutes, cruising at 500 miles at that altitude is not possible. The plane would have fell apart.
Pilots don't say that. Boeing says that.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry, you're right.
That is the structural limits of the airplane.
Boeing said that themselves on an interview, on a phone call.
Yeah, they said at sea level, the air is thicker. That's why we fly at 30,000 feet. The air is thinner. You can travel much faster. So at sea level, the air is a lot thicker.
As well.
Yeah, it's probably a lot easier to avoid them.
Yeah.
But it's also worth noting as well. After the bombings in '93, they also dumped I think it was $700-800 million in safety upgrades too, and they reopened that World Trade Center for they shut it down for 20 days. But they also, I guess that's the first major upgrades that they did since the actual the 70s when they started building them and stuff.
Yeah.
So because it got bombed in '93. So there were some safety upgrades that were made on those buildings. As far as what they were, I'm not too sure, but I mean,
now who had access to the buildings at that time? Now I'm going to raise a lot of questions. I don't expect answers. I just want to raise a question.
Right.
Is it possible that in 1993, when those buildings got bombed, and it was a van bomb, basically a big giant fertilizer bomb in a van below in the parking structures?
Right.
Is it possible that while those buildings were being shut down for restoration, that this could have started then? Could demolition charges have been set in the World Trade Center and left there for 8 years?
Yeah. Easy answer.
I'm just gonna
anything's possible.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just going to say this. So the theory by some people is that it was thermite, which I'm sure we'll get to. But if assuming back then thermite wasn't even an option, if you're talking about typical explosives, it would have taken a crap ton. I mean, we're talking tons and tons. So you're talking about getting it in there and no one noticing it. Right. Not only for all that time, but even if they did it anyway. I know we'll get there, but more recently, So I to your question, I would be skeptical that it was done at that time.
But and I'm not trying to go all left here, but
crazy,
if in the books they show that they have $700 to $800 million in renovations. Now, what if it's just plain listed as renovations? What if it's not itemized? We don't know exactly what those renovations are.
Yeah, because
we don't.
In construction,
that's
you don't.
skeptical.
Well, this is a good point. Ryan and I made this point on the way over here. we are not metallurgists. We are not engineers. We are not architects. We are not explosives experts.
not
We are not
physicists.
physicists.
Right, true.
You know, we are none of these things.
Yeah.
Anything that we've done for research on this podcast for this particular topic, we have to take face value at what we've read and what we've, digested from the source material that we get it from.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with that is that if you try to do any kind of research on 9/11 on the regular web these days as Joe Schmo researching, anytime you type in anything close to what resembles a 9/11 conspiracy theory, all you get is 9/11 conspiracy theory websites.
Yeah.
Unless you dig
lot
and
of
dig and dig. And
dismissive
everything
information and
everything is either black or it's white. It's either this is right or this is wrong.
Right.
It's very hard to disseminate what is fact and what is opinion, because there's a lot of people who are stating things as fact, and you don't know if this guy who's stating that he's a demolitions expert for 40 years
Yeah.
and that there's no way that this could have happened is telling the truth. You don't even know that he's a demolitions expert. You know what I mean? But if he has a good website and a good theory and it's detailed enough, maybe people believe him.
Stranger
But
things has happened. Yeah, for
I
sure.
think that the point before we get too much further into this, I want to make sure that our listeners, take to the point that we're just having a discussion, and we're
Yeah.
the podcast
you know what I
is
mean?
called Gentlemen No Class.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're-
about
So-
that.
So one of the things the Popular Mechanics brings up is that there was widespread damage. The one of the things that you look at is these planes hit and took out 10 to 12 floors per plane. Okay, so you have 10 to 12 floors of damage to these buildings. Now, it is worth noting that in the official report from NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So in their official report, they state that as each airplane hit, most 80 to 90% of the jet fuel that those airplanes were carrying ignited on impact. That's worth noting. So we're talking 8 to 10,000 gallons of fuel per airplane. We're talking a 45-minute flight. You're talking 500 gallons of fuel that it's burnt, maybe.
But before you get too far into this, do you want to just say what, just generally, what they say brought the towers down?
So NIST,
because
NIST doesn't say what brought the towers down, because in their official report, the only thing that they say is what caused all they say is that the impact and what started the initial collapse. After that, they do not go into what caused the continued collapse of the towers.
Well, they mentioned
state
progressive
that
fire. That's
they,
their
no,
new term.
no,
that's actually for
that's only for World Trade Center 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
NIST says in their official report, and if you ask them, they say the start of the collapse was started by the weakening of metal supports on
There
the
you go.
damaged
That's right.
floors
Yes.
from the fires that were burning, the jet fuel fires that were burning. But they do not say what caused the continued collapse of the buildings in rapid succession of each floor below it. Nothing. They stop. They say their report states after that the videos are proof enough that the buildings would collapse.
Right.
Now, the problem that a lot of people have with this is that if most of the jet fuel was consumed on impact and you only had, let's call it random office fires for lack of a better word, that means you have files and file cabinets burning, press board desks and cubicles and chairs and carpet and, all that kind of stuff burning with minimal amounts of fuel. You're talking office building fires, and there are plenty of videos online you can look at for multi-story high-rises on fire just from a fire, and they did not collapse. From the contents, they were not collapsed
several
or
hours.
weakened. So,
to be fair, you talked about the structure of the towers, 1
Right.
and 2. They're tube and tube, right? A perimeter of beams with the
Right.
core in the very middle. Most other high-rises, it looks a lot different.
Correct.
It's more of a web design.
right. So, and that's fair. That's a fair point. Now, since if we're going to talk about what brought down the towers, you know, if you want to talk about the official report is that the heating of the fires weakened the steel beams. The steel beams started to sag. That sagging buckled the outer layers of steel to the point where they snapped. That snapping action caused the interior girders to fall, and then that started a cascade effect, according to NIST.
Pancake.
But
isn't that what they call progressive collapse?
That's a progressive collapse. Now,
I think that's what NIST called.
That's right, and that
1 and 2.
The problem is that there's a society of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. They're very large, the organization, and they make a lot of valid points. Those guys are architects and engineers, well-respected architects and engineers, from my understanding. I'm not in that community. I don't really know. So,
but like I also mentioned, like me and Ryan were talking about earlier, there's also a side, an organization that's on the exact opposite, that they're for the official, the
That's
9/11
right, they
Commission.
are.
So it goes, then that's where it gets really confusing. It's like, okay, you got the same experience and knowledge that I have, but these group of guys over here too, but it's conflicting. It's like, well, who the fuck do you believe? Is like,
well, that goes to what Rob said about the 93 bombings, where I'm a contractor hired by you guys, and I'm taking out asbestos, but we don't know that that's what you are.
Yeah, we don't know. It's just like in the automotive world. That's what I know. That's my profession.
Off. I get it.
Fucker. I mean, you look at two mechanics with the exact same qualifications on paper. It has to get down to, like, who do you trust?
Yeah.
And if you have no way to trust, any basis on trust on either one of them, how do you trust them?
Right.
Really, honestly, there's been so many companies that have made computer models that have demoed these towers, and some of them are like, yes, the towers collapsed exactly like my computer model predicted. And some of them are like, no, there's no way that this tower should have collapsed the way that my computer model predicted. It's a lot of arguments back and forth. You know what I mean? And we as American citizens don't know which side to believe. All I know is what I have seen with my eyes and witnessed, and what I've seen and this is what I've seen, what I know is, from what I saw from those towers, I don't think that a high-rise tower built that way should have collapsed that fast. And the quickness of the collapse is what leads me to believe that it was some sort of controlled demolition in a sense that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was going to mention, what are the odds? Both buildings, they both got hit around like the same. I forgot what floors they affected.
30 minutes, yeah.
Within the exact. Pretty much like they say, Newton's third law of motion was absent that day.
Yeah, with every action,
for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah, here you go. Yeah,
and it doesn't. The impact doesn't seem like I say. Go back to the structural integrity of the building. Compared to this, little plane, it doesn't make sense. Like, what are the odds? Is both of them falling down the same way too? Instead of just,
go ahead,
Ryan.
I just want to hear. I just want to hear your sexy voice, Ryan.
Yeah, no, it is sexy. No, but that's the point I'm arriving is that it just the coincidence of both happening exactly, falling down exactly the same way, and I don't know,
But there was two unique things that had never happened before in the history of high-rise fires. That is that two planes collided into them, severing not only the perimeter columns on one side, but also a bunch of the core columns in the middle. And it never happened ever.
Yeah.
So this is unexperienced in the history that we're looking into, and so I feel like it's a little disingenuous of AE 9/11 and whoever else to say, well, this has never happened before. A high rise has never been brought down by the fires, and it's like, well, yeah, but no high rise has ever been collided by planes going 500 miles per hour before.
And this is true also. Now that brings up another interesting point, because for a plane to have flown 500 miles an hour, which is not a debatable fact, We have it on video of the South Tower being hit by a plane, and you can use the video frame of references to look at it and watch the plane. They can calculate speed based on the frames per second the video was shot in. Jake, you're a videographer. You know this.
Right.
Calculate that plane was flying close to 500 miles an hour. Boeing says that should not have been possible. That plane should have ripped itself apart flying through thick atmosphere that fast. There's so many points to this conspiracy theory that this is where people that don't believe it's a conspiracy theory jump into and say, this is way too complicated. Like, it's usually the simplest explanation is the simplest explanation.
Occam's razor, yeah.
Let me tell you something right now. I work for Tesla, and the simplest solution is almost like, for me, sometimes it's not always that way. There's always, and I feel like there's a lot of things that some people take for granted at this, you know what I mean? Like, they take it at face value without thinking about it. Like, one of the things that one of the big theories about this is going back to the hijacking. Let's start with the hijacking itself. Okay. There are some videos at Boston Dulles, and there are some at Logan International in Boston of the alleged hijackers going through security and getting to other points in the airport. But the official videos that were released are not time-stamped. Okay?
Yeah, right, yes.
There is evidence. The 9/11 Commission has said that there is evidence and other videos of these hijackers making test flights across, boarding different airplanes, seeing what they could get on and off the planes easily, making different flights across the country. Okay? Right. So, that being said, releasing videos that aren't time-stamped, that only show the security checkpoints, how can we be sure that they are from the day of the hijacking and not one of their other test flights?
Right. Yeah. I mean,
let me get through this whole theory of thought real quick, because I want to postulate this a little bit. If we can't prove that they were actually on the airplanes, so let's say, for example, there is a group of people that know that this is being planned. Okay, whoever they are, doesn't matter. There's a group of people that have gotten intel that this is happening. They have the videos of these guys. They're like, okay, these are our guys. Okay, we're going to go ahead and we're going to let them do what they're going to do. They have videos of them going through security checkpoints. They let these guys get on planes. And then one of the other things that people forget and bring up is, like, the hijackers, when they took over the planes, they didn't shut off. They didn't just disappear off of radar, okay? Air traffic controllers track these planes the entire time. The way that an airplane flies, and by the way, I'm not going to cite sources because I didn't clear it with Ryan, and I have a mutual friend, so I'm not just talking out of my ass, but he is a commercial airline pilot for over 15 years at least. And so I asked him some very personal questions about this, and I didn't clear it with him if it was okay if I could drop his name, so I'm not going to do it. But I do have a source, a personal source, so I can confirm this. The way that airplanes are tracked, an airplane is not the same flight number everywhere it goes. It has a transponder. You can change the code. If this is American Airlines Flight 11, you can change it or you can turn it off.
Right.
But that doesn't mean. That just means that the air traffic controller looking at the blip on the radar,
be there.
It sees the blip on the radar. It just basically has a question mark next to it. It's not sending a signal. 2 of the 3 planes that day, and I say 3 planes because one of them crashed in a field. Right. So we'll talk about the 3 planes that crashed in the buildings. So 2 of those 3 planes, 2 of them turned off their transponder signal, and one of them changed their transponder call sign on accident. They're thinking that maybe he didn't really know how to use it. Okay.
Right.
So at that point, no transponder signals. What if, this is a question I'm postulating, and multiple people have postulated it before me, so it's not like something I'm bringing up out of my ass. You know what I mean?
Baby, that sounds sexy out of your postulating.
So what if whoever knew about this had dummy planes or drones that were
I've heard of that
were that were, beefed up 767s made to fly, at faster than normal speeds, stripped down, quote unquote, battering ram type planes.
Yeah.
Okay. What if you have planes that were like that? Okay. And it's very common knowledge. I have another guy I worked with was in the Army and did radio repairs and things like that. So knows a little bit about radios and a little bit about aircraft and the way the military does things. It is very possible that you could have switched planes in midair by radar only works above a certain level.
Right,
so one of these drone planes could have come up and then you just switch places in midair. The other one pulls up, the other one drops down. And then you have these planes that they're still tracking these planes. There's a delay. We're talking about 2001 technology here. We're not talking about 2019 technology. Right. So these planes that hit the buildings, what if they're not American Airlines Flight 11? What if they're just drones that are designed,
right.
to make it seem like, that these hijackers.
But why? To what end? Like why? Why not just crash the drones? Why make it seem like you hijacked one and then crashed that? Most of the deaths were caused by the collapse of the buildings, not the deaths on the plane.
But exactly. So
that's
why? But how do you get the drones in the air? How do you make it seem like
who's controlling it on American soil?
Exactly.
So,
What
question, like based on what you said, it's not 2019 technology, it's 2001 technology, right? And then, based on that theory that if it was drones intersecting, to transmit that, okay, it's now a new plane. What about the those phone calls that were on the plane? 2001 going 400 some odd miles an hour,
500.
But
cell phone calls at 30,000 feet. That's
but what I'm trying to say is that are those paid actors, or is that like just
so there's a lot. I'll postulate this other theory. Paul's going to interject. Paul, you can chime in after this, but I'm gonna pop this in. Whoever orchestrated, like if this was a grand opera that somebody orchestrated and every nuance, every detail was covered, you know what I mean? Like the first thing you're going to ask is like, why didn't we hear from any of the victims? Okay, so now some of these phone calls get released. Let's say for argument's sake that some of them are cell phone calls and some of them are in-flight calls. Have you ever made an in-flight call on an old airplane, 5-10 years ago? You know how hard it is to make one of those flights, those calls? You have to swipe your card. It has to go through, whatever. It takes a while.
An air phone you're talking about.
An air phone, the ones that are on physically plane, attached to the plane.
You throw me a beer?
Now, one of the things that makes zero sense out of these phone calls is, one, have you ever tried to make a phone call on an airplane? Because I have. I've made one.
A prank phone call?
No, I've made a phone call talking to somebody on my cell phone.
Yeah.
2019 technology, and it is loud as fuck on an airplane, and you can only make it to about 10,000, 12,000 feet before it cuts out. Because then, I don't know if you know this, but cell phone towers are designed to transmit down and out. Right. Okay? So they're not made to point up, and you're talking about people that were making phone calls at 30,000 feet. It's not possible.
Yeah, no. And not to mention the speed, because you got to carry from one antenna to another.
Exactly.
It's going way too fast, and you're way too high to get a signal. So there's no way. They did studies like
even 2019, you can't make a phone call at 30,000 feet.
Okay,
so now you still can't do it.
No.
Now I'm only basing this on what I've read. Okay, I was under the impression that the planes that hit towers 1 and 2, there weren't a lot of phone calls. From what I read, 93, the one where the passengers actually took over the flight, that's where a lot of the chatter was coming from. Because they had found out, oh shit, towers 1 and 2 got hit.
Right.
And so they realized, oh God, we're not making this out alive if we don't do something.
Right. But they were cruising at 30,000 feet, allegedly, when they made those phone calls.
And I don't know if those are the ones.
They did release
There's two, I believe.
the flight data from the radar of what they thought was happening, and they were cruising pretty high when all that went down. But anyway, like, I don't know if you've ever, like, when the last time you were on a plane was and tried to watch a movie without, like, noise-canceling earphones, but you can't hear shit, okay? Like, and airplanes are super fucking loud. Like, people forget how loud a fucking airplane is,
Okay,
but they're loud.
Quit being cheap on those airlines, man. Go up to like United or
I fly United.
Delta. No, but you know those videos of the planes hitting the towers. Are they saying that plane's going 500 miles an hour?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, based on that video, and it's hard to see, but you got video from the base.
A couple of
it.
different angles, yeah.
Do you think that plane's going 500 miles an hour? Because when I think of 500 miles an hour, that shit should be going like super fast. And it kind of seems like it's like just kind of coasting a little bit. You know what I mean? Before it hits the top. I'm not trying to.
Yeah, because I think it's just
but-
so huge. It's so big. It's so fast. It looks like it's slow, but it's going fast as fuck.
Yeah, you're looking
Right.
at
I mean, I
something
thought about
big
that,
on a
yeah.
big scale.
Yeah, and it's the angles.
speed.
It looks,
And plus, I mean, and shit, I don't know the difference, but if
Yeah,
it was
you do.
only going 300 miles per hour,
Even
would that
still,
make a difference in what you're thinking the impact on the building? Because 300
Yeah.
miles per hour still seems pretty damn fast to
I
me.
mean, I'm not
to
justifying
crash
that it
into a
didn't
building.
Either way,
crash
it's
I'm
into
just
the-
saying, I don't know.
Yeah, I know.
Nice,
I'm
Rob.
just trying to see what the reason
Trying
why
to get that for you.
You emphasized that it was going 500 miles an hour, which I mean I don't know.
Right.
If that
I think
made a
that's about
difference.
that's cruising speed for a 767.
Oh, okay, that's why.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, at 30,000 feet. it
At
is-
30,000
but
feet.
at that fucking altitude,
It will
at 500
disintegrate. That's right.
feet,
That's why I brought it up because he said it will disintegrate.
Because like
Right.
you said, go back
So
to
maybe it wasn't going 500 miles an hour. What if it was going like 200? So
well,
therefore it
no,
didn't-
But you said
according
it's
to
sea
the-
level, right?
At sea level, yeah.
above
So
sea
we're
level,
above
500 feet.
So we're above sea level.
We're talking
But
we're
here-
talking anywhere between 500 to 0. The air is too thick for it to travel
The
that
atmosphere
fast.
is way
Okay.
too, yeah. That's why they can cruise. They go up to 30,000 feet, so they can cruise to 500 miles an hour. But I was, going back to what you're saying, possibly of a switch from a drone. Like I said, a drone, hitting the towers, and like Rob was saying, like they could, because like a military aircraft, no problem. They at low. Fucking even like really really low.
C-130.
They can do 500. Like they're built to withstand that fucking speed
Right.
and that.
We're talking about a passenger airplane.
Right, but of course
it's not built for that.
Exactly. But there's going back to the possibility if they did switch it, it'd be designed
Throw some
like
makeup on there,
a military aircraft.
paint
But
it
looks
like
Yeah.
it looks like
I know what you
like
mean.
a fucking 767, but it's built.
Anything's possible. And
Yeah,
I'm with you on
so
that.
how about
but
this?
That just doesn't make sense. But let's just go back to the what the commission report. They say it says on the commission report
that they
500
were
miles-
traveling 500.
Yeah,
the
at
official
500
report
feet.
says 500 miles per hour.
Yeah, so that's why that's raising the question. But yeah, go ahead.
So going to y'all's point on the being able to actually make the calls.
Fucking voice.
If you're able to make
There we go. Yeah, man. Fuck.
Everybody should know that Ryan's wearing a Macho Man Randy Savage
Yeah.
t-shirt. And
Matches that voice, baby.
it's fucking awesome. Is what it is.
always rises to the top.
Fucking Slim Jim. Yeah.
Stop it to a Slim Jim.
Ooh, Miss
I got you for 3 minutes. 3 minutes of playtime.
Elizabeth.
I like that. Oh, man.
Engine
R.I.P.
time.
Damn it. All right.
Bone saw.
Bone saw's ready.
I forgot where we're at, guys.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
But Ryan was speaking.
We needed that.
Yeah.
Because it was getting
All right.
too serious.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. I gotta break the shit up.
there you go. So I'm trying to because I always think of motive. I'm always in the back of my
I'm
mind.
with you,
I'm
and
thinking
of course.
why.
Right.
Like if you were whoever actually did, like let's say you're right, like there was a crisscross or whatever. Someone actually called in and said this plane has been hijacked. Why would you go to that trouble? Like if you could explain it away by saying, well, no one can actually make a phone call. It's too difficult. Why phone it in? Why call in and say, hey, this plane's been hijacked?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
so
And
the
multiple
theories-
ones.
The
called
theories,
in.
the theories that I've heard is because it's a lot easier to get behind if you have that American hero story. You know what I mean? You have these people, the let's roll narrative. You know what I mean?
Right.
Which is the quote that everybody got behind, that the guys that attacked the hijackers and brought the plane down. But here's the whole thing behind that. Let's say that whole story is 100% factual for that air flight. The 9/11 Commission report states that the hijackers crashed the plane on purpose, that there was no outside influence. They crashed the plane over Somerset, Pennsylvania, into that field in Shanksville or whatever
because
it is.
they knew the passengers were going to get in.
Okay,
and they were not going to be taken alive.
Hold on. Also, I was gonna. Wasn't that plane meant to hit something else too?
We don't know.
I thought there was a
theory
okay.
is DC,
the theory
right?
was the theory was it was
I think
headed to DC to
yeah,
hit the White
okay,
House.
Yeah, that's what I heard. Okay.
Now, now that's an asinine theory because anybody who's anybody knows that the White House has surface-to-air missiles mounted
there,
on the
man.
fucking roof. You're not getting anywhere near it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, what's the other? No, what's amazingly enough, you're talking about how these planes got to the buildings in the first place. Okay,
Right.
I mean, you're talking about a total lack of any kind of intervention by our military or anything.
Well, didn't
It's
they say about
worth
it was a
worth
drill?
noting. Yes, there was war games going on, and I asked a guy that I worked with. I asked he is on Ryan's side. I couldn't schedule him in because I couldn't make the timing work out. But he was active duty Army, and he was for a long time, and he was a grunt, so he kind of understands like the way things work. Like,
Right.
not again, the official narrative is, well, we were doing this and we were doing that and blah blah,
ask,
blah,
no tell.
whatever. Hand jobs and hookers. That's the way it goes. But he was telling, I told him, I said, hey, look, will you just watch this documentary. I was like, I want you to just watch a little bit of it. Give me your feedback on the military part of it. I want to know how accurate these guys' assumptions are. And he came back to me. He stopped like halfway through the first 20 minutes, and he goes, "Look, let me tell you something about these guys and this assumption of what was going on." Hold on. First off, on the day of 9/11, the U.S. government had credible evidence that there was going to be a terror attack around that time. They didn't know a day. They didn't even know a week, but they had credible evidence that there was going to be a terror attack. They had evidence that they had been told, and this is all in the 9/11 Commission report, this is fact, okay? Mm-hmm. They had evidence that there was going to be a terror attack. They had evidence of who was behind the terror attack. They had evidence that it was going to involve commercial airliners and attacking national monuments, okay? And that it was going to happen on the East Coast early in the morning. They did not know what day, but there was a couple of reports that the 11th of September was one of the target days. Here are some other facts. The national threat level was lowered to its lowest level the day before the attacks of 9/11. On 9/11, the U.S. was actively engaged in war games scheduled for that day, and some of those war games were in preparation for taking down
Explain what that is.
A war game is when the U.S. military goes through exercises in hypothetical, theoretical situations. So they will say, okay, we're going to act like somebody hijacked a commercial airliner. And how do we respond? This is how, let's see how it responds and how it plays out. We're going to see what everybody, we're going to find our own weaknesses and fix them. The U.S. was actively involved in war games on the West Coast. There were 4 jets stationed on the East Coast to protect the entire East Coast of America that day of the September 11th. When all this happened, the military scramble to figure out what the fuck was going on was so severe that most of the higher-ups that couldn't figure out, most of the higher-ups that were to be making these decisions, number one, were nowhere to be found. And a lot of people conjecture, why was Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld unable to be found before and during, and not for an hour after, or right after the Pentagon got hit. He was on the lawn of the Pentagon, like picking up debris and helping people, whatever. But during decision makings, he was nowhere to be found when the towers were hit. The other thing about that was a lot of people, like, well, if all these war games are going on and they're acting like they're commercial airliners being hijacked, there was a lot of confusion in the military about, was it a game? Was this part of it? Was this a drill? Was it the exercise? Or was this real life? So there was a lot of misinformation that happened. And I truly believe that the military is that fucking dumb that they couldn't figure it out. Well, I will give it to the what do you call the debunkers on that point, that like our military is really that fucking stupid that they couldn't figure it out.
I'm going to let you finish this diatribe, but I do have a rebuttal after you're done.
Go ahead. I'm done. Go for it.
So NORAD is in charge of this, right? They're
Right.
the
Where
ones
is
that are.
NORAD?
What's that?
Where is NORAD?
Is there a one?
Yes.
Are there one location
Yes.
of NORAD?
I can assume
And
it's
responsible for
Langley.
defending. Yeah, exactly.
Ryan,
There-
yes.
What
there's
is NORAD?
multiple- Oh shit! Don't ask me for the fucking.
The
acronym.
National
D
Organization
stands for defense.
of Air Defense. Yes. NORAD is in
got
Cheyenne
it.
Mountain. NORAD is underneath Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado.
Okay. So they're tasked with that, but you need to give a little context here. There had not been a reason for NORAD to go after a domestic flight in over 20 years.
This is true.
Okay? And we think of technology now, but we're talking about 20 years ago, damn near. Back then, so
You're old as fuck, by the way.
Thank you. You went over. I'm 36. And you're
talking.
35.
Right.
36 on
Don't
March
be modest.
1st.
I always give it-
45.
He's 2 months older than me, and I give him so much shit about it. Always have since we were teenagers.
And you were the oldest looking fucker I know, so that's what's so ironic about it.
It's true.
So,
He's in much better shape than I am.
oh yeah. So So we're adding context here, right? So you went over the timeline to begin this, right? There was an hour and change, if even that. I can't remember the exact time, between the time the flight took off and when it hit the building. That's nothing, man.
But how long was it between the actual hijacking? The problem is that when they actually figured out it was a hijacking and when it hit the building.
Yeah, that was like so. From what I remember, and I'm doing this from memory, I haven't looked it up. The phone call to the it wasn't even to NORAD. It was either the CIA or the FBI that it was a hijacking. Was like at 8:15, and the plane hit the building at, what was it?
Like 8:45. It was like 20 minutes.
Okay, so yeah. So 20 minutes, half an hour, somewhere in there, right? So NORAD had half an hour to compensate for this.
That's what I'm saying. I think that's totally credible that our government totally botched
but I don't
this.
think it's you say botched, but I'm saying like they didn't have time, and plus at the time, okay, in order for NORAD to know
hold on.
and make a call, you there was no like automated way to tell them. So, a flight's been hijacked. No, not at the time.
Okay.
You literally had to call them,
Right.
and have the right person pick up and say, "Oh, flight's been hijacked." Right,
Right.
And so even then, at the time, you're right. They had 4 planes in the area that could scramble. That they did scramble.
What is
flight?
What is standard? But did you do you know what standard flight response time is for an F-16 at the time?
Was it 6 minutes?
At the
11 minutes.
Okay, at the time I don't know, but I do know 20 years earlier they had similar flights scrambled. It took over an hour for the scrambled flights to get to where the commercial hijacking had happened. Plus, I don't know your times. 11 minutes is really short, so I don't know about that. But what I do know is at the time, laws forbid them for going supersonic to intercept commercial flights. So I don't know if the 11 minutes is going supersonic, but at the time they could not do that to intercept a commercial flight because at the time NORAD looked externally. They did not look internally.
Yes. And that is correct. That is correct. That is a fact also. And Donald Rumsfeld, he to his credit, he did testify to that. He said, everything is pointed outwards. We're not looking for a domestic flight getting hijacked at that point, and response time for an F-16 at that time, if it was an F-16, I don't know what they were, F-14, whatever it was at the time, flight response time
last generation
is supposed to be 11 minutes at the time. In 2001 it should have been 11 minutes, scramble the pilots into the planes, into the air, that should take less than 11 minutes. Flight time from where the planes were stationed to where each one of the planes were hijacked was about 3.5 minutes. There was enough time, but like I said, the government, I don't think, because we were involved in active war games, nobody knew what the fuck was going on, if it was real or not, and people dropped the ball. And that's, I think, honestly, like, I think that if you're talking about a terrorist attack, like, I think they caught us with our pants down. If you're talking about somebody orchestrating this, they picked the perfect fucking time.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, if you listen to a lot of the audio between the communication, asking for like, is this real world or exercise? They're like completely confused. It's scrambling.
Yeah.
So that backs it up. Like it's hard to tell. Each way works. Like even if we fucked up, whatever, or like Rob said, if it's orchestrated, then it's just perfect because it just got everybody scrambled. They could not figure out what was real world or exercise.
It's hard to believe that, I think it's safe to say that northeast part of the country is the most important part. You got the White House, you got all the government shit, right?
Yeah.
You would think that they will be on top of their game on every day.
Not to mention, like, I think our defense system at the time is like, it's a $500 billion defense system, and these fuckers and just box cutters and all the things that happen, nothing's impossible. It's just it's just highly improbable. But
there's a lot of questions that get raised from the day.
Well, are we going to raise the question about HW having a meeting with his brother?
Well, I don't know that that's like.
Well, because that happened on the 10th and 11th, meeting up at the New York Ritz-Carlton with Osama bin Laden's brother. So and then when the whole country was shut down, can't fly anywhere. They chartered a plane on the 19th for the guy.
So here's another thing that you should know about that. That's a big point of conjecture from both sides, because people that don't know and don't know the history of that family and take things at face value and just read the articles, they don't really know exactly what happened with that. But Osama bin Laden was a radical Islamist, and he was a billionaire radical Islamist who was ostracized from his entire family. Right. His entire family did not like his ideals.
The 17th of like 50-something children.
Yeah.
I'm still trying to figure it.
Serious?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how a guy could have fathered 50-something children.
Lots
a
of
billionaire.
fucking,
A billionaire father.
Because he
would hone off his wives to his workers.
Okay, so that is true. Then he was a billionaire. I thought that was just a theory.
No, his dad was a billionaire.
The family
the
hated
United States,
Yeah.
the United States
right.
government, United States government funded his group of radicals to fight the Russians and the Ukrainians in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We trained them. Hey, you can go outside, Ryan, like on the side of the house right here. It's quicker.
Whatever's easy.
Get a bottle.
And no one's
that happened at work the other day.
You're a lot of people assume that
We'll miss you.
Just because you have a person like Osama bin Laden, that maybe like his family's backing him. No one's
saying that. But what are the odds on the day of? There's 365 days in a year.
Well, think about it like this: if the bin Laden family is an ally of the United States, at that point, those people, once it comes out that Osama bin Laden is behind that, and this guy is his brother, how do Americans react to situations like that?
Here's the deal though about that.
Guy would have got fucking
My
lynched
question
in the
is
street.
why risk being seen together?
Exactly.
Before this happens, like it kind of just doesn't make sense. I'm just saying, like it just feels like it just could be coincidence, or maybe there's more to it.
It's very much coincidence.
But it just
could
seems,
be, and it could have been a positive meeting.
Yeah,
or
but
it could have been a meeting like, "Hey, my brothers might be attacking your country."
Oh, that's true. It could be
we don't know
warning,
what the premise.
Right. But I'm just saying the convenience, or I don't know, like if they were in on it for something. Like, why would they be seen together the day before or whatever? You said the day before, right? The 9th or the 10th?
10th and 11th.
The 10th?
They were
together. Yeah, that's so close
banging.
to happening. Yeah, bang. Yeah.
Straight to banging.
It just wouldn't make sense. It just looks stupid. It's like, come on. It's just like,
and that's another thing. There's a lot of people that say okay, HW was behind this whole thing. He orchestrated it. His administration.
That's not what I'm
orchestrated
saying at all.
No, but hold on. I'm just saying there are people that say that.
Oh, yeah.
That HW was behind this whole thing, and it was to get back for whatever they needed to make this link or whatever. You know what I mean? But like, if that was the case, like he's saying, like, why risk hanging out with Osama bin Laden's brother the day before the attack? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if this was this was a very well orchestrated attack on America, and I don't think that the official narrative explains exactly what happened, and I don't think that what we're being told, the motives behind it are
So why fly him out on the 19th? Why?
Because that's what I'm saying. Like, because if you have a guy, this is Osama bin Laden's brother, but all we hear is brother. How many brothers do you have?
No.
How
I know
many
what you mean.
brothers
He has a
do you
big
have?
family. Yeah, I have 3 brothers. Yeah.
Brian, how many brothers do you have?
30.
How many brothers do you have?
1.
I have 2 brothers.
Right.
Osama bin Laden has like fucking probably 30 fucking brothers. You know what I mean? If when it came out that Al Qaeda was behind this and that Osama bin Laden was and this guy is like Tommy bin Laden or whatever the fuck his name
Tommy,
is.
yeah.
You know what
Let's
I mean?
go with that. I like that.
You know what I mean?
That's
like,
a good
this
American
guy's
name,
going to
yeah.
be lynched in the fucking street by these fucking ignorant
course.
rednecks who are going to, you know what I mean? That's why they fly him out, because we're trying to save face with the bin Laden family, who are billionaires who are actually U.S. allies.
When did we pin bin Laden to the whole situation?
Al Qaeda, like, I think that was a couple days later. Let's. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just
like,
whatever
that's
the
a good
facts.
question. I don't know the answer to
You
that.
know what I think's hilarious? You said
Man,
the
that
basis.
voice, goddammit. I'm sorry. It just comes out of nowhere.
Do you
beautiful,
know?
man. You got
You
it,
said the
man.
basis for this was going to be the Popular Mechanics article.
Yeah, we haven't
you
touched
talked
any
about
of
a
it.
single time?
Yeah, I
He
started
told me
off.
this. He texted me
yeah.
this. He's
This
like,
is the way we
all right,
do it.
man.
Hey,
Vote
hey,
up on that Popular Mechanics article.
I know. Well,
That's
this
the
is
basis,
seismic
baby.
We tried.
spikes.
We tried, man. We tried. You know, that's
fair enough.
Hey,
there's so many.
There's no we, Rob. There's you. All right.
You're stirring this pod,
But no,
man.
you're doing all right.
I'll leave.
No, your own house. You
Goodbye.
leave your own
Hey,
house.
before you leave, give me a beer,
now.
please.
There's a beer right
Before
there.
you leave.
There's a beer right there.
Can someone pass that? bad
You
boy?
lazy fuck. Reach over there and get it.
All right.
I got you, bro.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, okay.
This mountain of beer in front of me. I don't want to, topple the shit over.
You know, slight subject change. You know, I've always wondered the victims, the people that are on all the planes, right? That the family members, the victims that are that had family
Victim?
members, that died on the planes, right?
Right.
And I always wondered, it's like, man, I don't think I've ever seen anyone that's been interviewed, like any
on
family
the
members.
plane.
But I
Yeah.
did look into it once. There is, but it's very minimal. Like I think I saw one interview. I forgot.
A lot of the people that are interviewed
Or-
for passengers on the plane were passengers of Flight 93 that crashed
Yeah.
in Shanksville.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Those are most of the people that are interviewed.
yeah,
But
'cause,
you
like,
got to
you
think
know,
that, like, there's
like,
what, 200 people on each plane?
Well, that
you
goes
never
to
hear
the-
from any of
that
them.
goes- that
a
goes-
lot of
that
them
goes
actually,
to the theory,
No,
I mean-
most of them weren't full.
I'll shut up.
Sorry, no.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. No, I
Right,
knew you were going with that. Yeah,
right.
They weren't full. It wasn't a full
Yeah.
airline on both of those planes, or
And,
the ones that hit the building.
I don't know who the pilots were exactly. Like for flight.
Well,
usually they don't-
that's.
I mean, there
that's
is.
well
It's there. It's
documented.
documented. But I'm just saying, like, it's not as. I guess it would have been, remain private or whatever. I just thought that was kind of odd. Like, I feel there'd be more people that would speak of. I don't know.
Okay, so just a little
Yeah.
fact for you.
Okay.
A Boeing 767 has a seating capacity for 181 to 375 people, depending on how the plane is arranged. So let's call it an average of 220.
But what if it was a
people.
whole bunch of? No. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So let's say it's an average of 220 people on a full flight.
Yeah.
Let's cut that. It's a half full flight. We're talking 110 people per plane that hit the World Trade Center towers. That's 220 people. Let's call it. Not everybody's traveling alone. Okay, so let's call it 90. Let's call it 90 families exist of these people. Like there should be like 90 people, like 90 families that are like my. But you never like, at least I haven't, and I could be wrong, but I haven't heard from any of these people. Like they're not calling me. I mean, that's not what I mean. They're like, I haven't heard interviews, like you're saying.
Right.
I haven't heard
Yeah.
interviews with
Well, I
any
never
of them.
really
Right.
looked into the interviews.
Yeah,
I don't even know
I
if
just
they're
thought
out there.
about
The
that.
only
No,
ones that
there is.
when you look for
but
interviews, the only ones
there's
you
not so
find
many.
building, yeah.
are from Flight 93. I
well,
mean, that's what
I
you
mean,
hear.
and then the building victims.
Yeah,
that's
but
it.
nobody else though. No,
Yeah.
I mean,
I never
just
really thought
So
about that. Man.
back to the buildings. One of the points of conjecture that really gets me that people argue about is, grab a couple while you're in there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fuck.
Well,
Make yourself.
One
useful.
guess, man. I want to make you get up.
one of the things that
I
I'd
do
like
wanna
to
make
bring
you get
up is
Something with taste, man.
one of the things. Grab him. What do you like?
Something
Dark.
with- yeah, give me something dark, baby.
I got those milk
Yeah,
stouts in there.
Fuck that. Milk right now?
No. Give him one of those. Give him one of those Elder Ale.
Jacob?
No,
I
fuck
drink
that.
milk around this time.
Yeah,
You know,
one
he
of
gets
those.
fucking
Give
milk
Jake
around
one of
this
those.
time.
Oh yeah, I'll drink one too. Here, take one of these.
All right, I'll get up for that.
What are you drinking?
I'm
Intermission of this podcast episode.
Yeah,
Yeah.
re-beer me.
Intermission.
Turn tape over.
You
The side
I'm gonna have one of
B.
these and another one of these.
fucking loser.
Right now is the time for you to go pump gas in your car on your way to work. You know.
Boom, boom, boom,
Damn, elevator music?
Okay,
nice.
Oh, that's Jeopardy.
I thought you were doing Tonto. Jump on it.
I'm on it.
Easily confused.
Yeah.
Nobody makes me bleed my own blood.
Yeah.
There you go. Like,
There you go.
Nobody
yeah.
can resist
Michelle.
white when he puts on his shiny shoes.
name that movie in the comments if you listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
You will be
also-
rewarded.
If
all right.
you,
So
if you,
back
if
to
you hate me too,
back
be
to one of the
vocal about
things that, like, I did another piece of personal research on. Okay, one of the things that people like to comment on is the fact that these guys are alleged hijackers. Had very minimal flight experience that we know of in the United States, and they were terrible pilots on a Cessna, and they got on these 767s, 757s, and made these complex maneuvers. The planes dropping down from high altitude to low altitude, crashing into the towers. The biggest complex maneuver is this weird banking maneuver, or this odd, this banking maneuver that is made in the 757 in Washington to fly down almost to ground level to hit the Pentagon
Right, yeah.
head on.
Star Fox.
Which is a very, very odd way to hit a building. Because honestly, like, if you're thinking about it, like, why would you hit a building like that? Like, especially the
With a
Pentagon.
plane?
It's only
Odd
five.
fuck- yeah,
why wouldn't you
it's
just
so
crash it into
low.
like
Yeah.
personally? Like, why wouldn't you just come straight down on top of it if you're going to crash?
Not
a
only
plane?
that, or like
Yeah.
drive a van.
That's actually
into
some
it or
pilots.
something,
They
you know?
said that too. Like,
get
if
that.
they would have
So,
done it that way. Because
how many stories is the Pentagon?
5 stories.
Yeah.
5 stories. That's an
So,
apartment, dude.
so here's the thing. Here's the thing that gets me about the Pentagon. They said that these very, very minimally skilled pilots dropped this plane from 30,000 feet to 500 feet in less. They only had control of this plane for 8 minutes. So in 8 minutes, they dropped from 30,000 feet to a few feet off the ground because the pictures of the Pentagon hit before that wall collapsed was almost at ground level. Okay, and the pictures don't do. The pictures are not.
Fucking
We'll
never-
get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But the
Not the HD video clip.
with the missing frame.
Several frames.
So there.
Jesus,
So
man.
being able to drop this plane off this banking maneuver, come down off the ground and fly it without touching the wings on the ground or whatever, and slamming it into the side of this building at 500 miles an hour should be a very difficult maneuver for somebody who can't fly a Cessna.
Okay, just
That's
the-
what a lot of the conspiracy theorists say.
Just to clarify real quick, that I can't remember too. It's 500 miles an hour too, as well for the Pentagon.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
Oh,
got to be
God.
like being super wasted and hitting a bullseye in darts.
Yeah.
That
I mean, like,
has-
I said,
so-
like I said, nothing is impossible. It's just highly
Right.
improbable. but
now
hold
here's-
on, hold on. But okay. So what I read was that it actually kind of did skid against the ground because one of the conspiracy theorist things was the hole in the Pentagon was smaller than the width of the plane.
Correct.
But what I had read was that it actually did kind of skid against the ground, which knocked off one of the wings.
Which is
And
not
then-
true because they didn't find any wings outside. They found no debris outside of the building.
Well, how is that possible if a plane hit the building?
Exactly.
it says like pulverized.
I'll
like
just
they
go. That
recorded
goes
them
with
when
the
they hit
with
it.
the other.
There was no plane debris outside of the Pentagon building. In the official 9/11 report, they recovered 0 plane debris outside of the Pentagon
They
building.
found the passports of the hijackers, right? They found the IDs.
That's actually at,
the
Ground
Trade Center.
Zero.
Yeah, Ground Zero.
Yeah.
But they didn't find any like wreckage of the plane.
Yeah.
or
They couldn't even find
Hey,
anything.
coincidence.
everything
Yeah.
You're saying
disintegrated.
at the Pentagon?
Everything disintegrated. No, we're talking about the
No.
Trade Center.
You're talking about the Trade
I'm talking about the
Yeah,
Trade Center, but
the
everything
passport,
disintegrated.
that
But
is.
they found the IDs of the hijackers, right?
Coincidence, yeah.
So, I mean-
unscathed. You know, just everything else.
I'm not saying
pulverized.
debris. Obviously, a plane
Right.
fucking hit the
Right.
trade center.
Right.
Right. We saw that. But
So
Conveniently, they were found.
Yeah, so I mean the Popular Mechanics article, these guys say, yeah, no, the planes actually ripped apart as the plane was coming in at 500 miles an hour. Okay, one of the big conspiracy theories, is it possible for an amateur pilot to pull off a maneuver like that? Now, there's a lot of people and a lot of websites that argue that no, that maneuver is not possible. I talked to Ryan and I's mutual friend.
Yeah.
Who
we
is a
give him a
commercial?
name?
No, he asked.
No,
said say John Doe.
No. Give him a fictional name.
Well,
Vega.
Let's call him Mermelstein. Mermelstein.
We'll
says,
call him. Okay, we'll go with Mermelstein. So Mermelstein.
Yes.
I can't say that. I can't say
Yes,
that.
you can.
How did he guess his real name? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
We'll call him Schmeggery.
Schmeggery.
And so he told, like, I postulated this hypothesis to him and said, hey, is this possible? And gave him a few data points and said, if somebody was a terrible pilot on a Cessna, couldn't solo, instructor couldn't, approve a solo flight.
Are you going to say Han Solo?
Could maybe have a couple of hours in a simulator on something, whether it was a 757, 767, 47, whatever. Would it be possible for them to pull off this maneuver? His answer to me was, yeah, probably.
Yeah, probably.
The airplanes are very forgiving and pretty easy to fly if you've had any kind of flight time at all. So is that maneuver possible? Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I would think
It's
that,
very,
if you have training
very
as a
hard
pilot,
to do that,
I
seen they showed like people in flight simulators doing the exact same path and try to aim to they failed every time because so many variables when you're trying to control a plane, especially hitting that target the way it is. But like I said, it's possible. It's so highly. It's up there.
It's
like,
highly
man,
improbable. Yeah.
So,
but let's go for the fact that, like, okay, let's go back to the thing that, like, that plane was, that the impact of the build, like, so both the conspiracy theorists and the people who don't believe, that believe the official report, all use this one composite photo of the Pentagon after it was hit before the wall collapsed, because there was a good couple of hours before that side of the building collapsed, that there was these there's this photo, and it's a composite photo of the building as, like taken in sections, and it kind of shows what the impact area is before the collapse. The thing that gets me is, one, the wingspan doesn't match that of the building. A lot of people say, well, the wings disintegrated a little bit before it hit. That's fine, but if that was the case, where's the wing debris? They never found any wing debris. They never found any airplane debris outside of the Pentagon. Hold on, let me finish, Ryan. I know you want to say something. Woo-hoo. The other part of that is, one,
yeah, me too.
the hole in the building. The hole in the building does not account for the rear horizontal stabilizers or the tail. It is just a round hole,
like a missile,
with two lines next to it. Mm-hmm. And there are multiple accounts of people saying that they saw a plane or a possible missile hit the side of the Pentagon, much smaller than a commercial airliner. Much smaller than a commercial airliner.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's what the official accounts on the ground say. Another thing that the official accounts on the ground say, that the official account from the government, the structural account of the Pentagon after it was hit, goes through and shows every column and every wall that was destroyed. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a hole through 3 of the rings of the Pentagon office building. It's 5 rings, A, B, C, D, and E. So E on the outside, A on the inside. So apparently, like, this plane punctured all the way through C ring into the alleyway between B and C. Okay,
right.
But all of there's 5 or 6 columns that are at the beginning of C ring, not at the other end of C ring, at the beginning of C ring, that were damaged but still intact right in front of this hole that punctured out. Like, how would that even be possible?
What do you mean damaged but intact?
They
What does
were
that
still
mean?
standing. They had some damage to them, but they were not destroyed. That means they were intact from floor to ceiling. And we're talking like if you're looking straight, you're talking about a column here, 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 and here across a field of vision. Like, but on the other side of that, there's a hole through that wall where they're saying the nose of the airplane went through. Mm-hmm. Like, how would that be possible if there's no debris over there and all of these columns are intact?
So what?
Are these
So
columns
what's your,
are like 16-inch off center or what? I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm just saying. Like,
so what's your alternative? Is a missile? You said.
I'm not postulating what I think because I
that
don't
word
know that
again.
I don't
the
have.
facts, yeah. There's what
We're just talking facts.
Well, yeah,
what's
it just-
been-
what-
they
pretty
didn't
much
find any
questioning, you know,
debris.
raising
They didn't
assumptions,
find-
you know?
No, that's the facts.
So what I had read, and you said there was no debris found. I don't remember reading that. But what I had read was that one of the wing, like it kind of grazed against the ground. One of the
Right.
wings got scraped off, right, and the other wing. Once it actually collided with the building, this building was blast resistant, right? It's not like it's paper and it's just going to crumble
Coincidentally,
as soon as there was
that
contact,
one,
right?
Coincidentally, that one section of the building had been upgraded to withstand a missile or plane attack in the month prior to the attack.
You know that.
I don't know that.
Well, there you go. Well, and
I think that's
and once again, the other wing had been like once it actually collided with the building, got popped off. So that's why the actual hole in the building is significantly smaller.
But where's the wing at outside the Pentagon?
But like,
because
like,
all they
like
say
you're
that they
looking
You're
found-
talking about an
you're-
entire wing.
But you're
They
looking
found
for a wing. You're
no,
looking
they
for,
found
like, it's not-
nothing.
No, they found
you're,
like the
okay,
fuselage.
You're saying
Let's see. Here's my problem. Okay, I get the fact that they said it could disintegrate. Like that doesn't make any fucking sense. Like the impact for the Pentagon like that. If it was a plane or where the fuck it was, like and the lack of parts, like you're saying, Rob. I don't understand how like disintegrate.
Well, the only
That's
explanation to that
fucking-
is if it is going 500 miles an hour at sea level, or within that 500
That's
feet,
even- you know, 'cause that's
and then
even-
it disintegrated. But I mean, I don't know. But
Yeah, this
you
is
would think you
supposedly
would
this
find
is
some-
even lower. This is like I don't know how many feet.
Right.
How low?
Obviously, yeah.
'Cause imagine
This
it's
thing
going
skimmed
so fucking
and
low.
hit right at ground
Right.
floor.
You would think they did find a little bit of debris. They found that the fuselage.
most of it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's all I hear about.
They didn't. They never found the engines from the plane.
Exactly.
But once again, what's the alternative?
Hey,
I'm
that's the
just
question
saying.
to
That's
remain.
that- that's-
okay,
like
and
some,
that's the
some,
question.
some wingless
Right, yes.
thing,
Right,
You
exactly.
know, that
We
had a
don't-
fuselage and,
Exactly.
and the
Right.
nose. You know, like,
Exactly.
Right. We don't know. Like what,
We don't know. We're not.
know.
But
The
I'm not
I
saying
know,
that-
but like, okay, but like y'all are saying, it's not what they say it is. But like, you
No,
have
well,
to have an alternative.
Of course.
I don't-
You
yeah.
can't.
But
You can't
what-
just be like, well, it's bullshit.
Well,
But-
no, yeah, no.
No,
of
we
course
can.
not,
We
but-
can question the official
Yeah.
narrative. We want the
but
real. We
there's
want
no
the
alternative.
truth.
But
Exact-
I know,
yeah.
But like, what would you have done? What is your recommendation? Okay, so you say, well, there was no debris. So what would you say they do now? What would you
I
say
would.
they do
Want,
now?
I would want. See, the biggest problem with all this is that the 9/11 Commission, all the information that they have, when there have been independent people who have donated millions of dollars to have a third party commission report done, and have asked for all this information through the Freedom of Information Act, all of this information. The FBI and the CIA have said, no, we're not giving you any of it. The flight data recorders allegedly were found. None of the tapes were released.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. The first time in history, black boxes are
Completely destroyed.
They're not indestructible anymore.
Yeah. Well,
The problem
yeah,
is that
that's-
all
that's
this information was taken in. They took what they wanted. There's testimony from a lot of government officials that were left completely out of the report. Timelines that don't add up. Things that official like that Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld said, "Oh, I was here when this happened, and I know I was here when this happened." Things that they've stated under oath and in interviews, and the 9/11 Commission report completely dismisses that and says, "No, they were here." But their own personal recollection adds up to one timeline, but the official report adds up to another one. So the biggest thing is that something is being covered up. We're not hearing the whole truth. I just want to hear the whole truth.
and we may not
yeah.
be. And look,
Yeah.
Never.
I believe in the, for the most part, the official reports. I do, but I'm also not naive enough to think that they're telling us everything.
Of course.
Right? So it's like, where's that line? God, they messed up so badly, because I agree, they had so many reports. There were multiple reports that they knew those 19 guys were in the country. And
they knew that they were flying multiple times on different airplanes, the same routes, flying from the same terminals. They knew.
Right, and yet nothing was done.
Nothing. Dick Cheney was asked up to a few minutes before the plane hit the Pentagon, do the orders still stand? And he said, of course they still stand. And nothing happened. So what was the order? Was the order to shoot the plane down because nothing happened? Or was the order to not shoot the plane down because they knew it was coming?
Right. The thing is, there's so many red flags, and either they're trying to cover up their own mistakes because they were incompetent that day, or they knew something was going on and they just wanted to play hush. Why else would the 9/11 Commission report reveal the report years after? They say want to do a thorough investigation, but how do you do a super thorough investigation when soon after the towers collapse, China buys all that steel as scrap?
Yeah,
that's one of the craziest things.
That's crazy, man. You need to
2 weeks after
all the evidence very quickly.
That's one of the things I do not understand.
Now, one of the other things.
Why would you do that? I mean, I'm no engineer, but I mean, I would think
one of the other things that doesn't make any sense is all the reports of explosions happening in the towers before the collapse.
Yeah.
During the collapse and after the collapse.
Well, the rebuttal to that, the explosions are the shit buckling.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's these people say you got to keep in mind, these people didn't say it was explosions. They said it sounded like explosions. Well, that could be shit. God, that could be anything,
okay.
Man.
Look, number one, the maintenance workers in the building, both buildings, say that they heard explosions before the first plane hit. They heard explosions in the basements of the tower before the first plane
But then why
hit.
wasn't something collapsing? If there was
explosions
happening.
Explosions happened in the basement of the buildings in 93 and the buildings didn't collapse.
It was just weakening probably the situation. Listen, man, we like right now, it's 2019. We're researching this stuff. Anything can be altered. There's this YouTube channel I saw where these apartments, they had all this debris inside their apartments. Well, this one person that lived there decided to take all this debris and take it to NYU and get it tested, and they found a crazy amount of thermite in that debris. Now, I don't know how true that is, but I mean...
But that's the thing, is like they test it for a chemical compound. Right. They don't test it for a brand name of this is thermite.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like
you have to assume things to assume that it's thermite. It's not... Because then it'd be cut and dry, right? If it was we found thermite. Oh, well, shit. Yeah. There you go. But no, it's like there's indicators that you can interpret as thermite, or you can interpret as other things.
They interpreted it because they said that it was combustible. Like it ignites and stuff like that. So,
but the buildings were built in the. I'm kind of on the fence on that one because the buildings were built in the 70s. The World Trade Center attacks happened in 93.
Fair enough, yeah.
They knew that these buildings were not viable, past a certain point in time, but they were on prime Manhattan real estate. Larry Silverstein buys these insurance policies. He gets almost, I think he settled with the insurance companies for $4.5 billion for after this happened. 6 weeks. And here's the crazy part is he spent every morning having breakfast in the North Tower on the 110th floor in the restaurant on the 110th floor, except that day.
The fuck, man! When I hear shit like that
day.
So did he buy this policy? You said 6 weeks before, or
6 weeks?
He bought the policy.
He bought the buildings and the insurance policy.
That's crazy.
So there's a couple things.
I'm sorry, Paul. I know you're going to say something.
Well, no, I was. I was just quickly. It's just a fact. But Ground Zero, it took exactly 100 days for the fires to stop in Ground Zero.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Rivers of molten steel.
It was burning for that. Most people don't know that. It fucking over three fucking months. Yeah, the fucking stopped burning. That's crazy.
Every time the news crew would see that, there's a whole bunch of smoke still coming.
Yeah.
Hold on, Ryan. What was the face that you made when I said molten steel?
No, because it's a huge point of contention, dude. Like, it is a huge point of contention.
I don't think that's a point of contention. They're pulling steel girders out of this thing a month later, and they're still red hot, dripping molten steel. There's video of it.
Dude, dripping, it would have to be 2,800 degrees.
Exactly. Like, what would cause that? Months later? There's video evidence of it happening.
Because even if it was thermite, I'm getting all worked up.
No, please. This is good. This is good for radio.
I'm
going to take a step Get worked up, baby. I'm on your side no matter what. Fuck Rob.
Just because of the voice.
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. Yeah.
Thermite,
We're not talking about thermite. Fuck thermite. Let's not talk about that.
No,
it's not going
let's
to
hear
continue.
about-
It's not going to continuously be over 2,800 degrees to keep it liquid metal for months after the initial event.
How would that happen?
What do you? No, okay, but go.
So your argument is that a month after 9/11, because the fires were still burning well into December of that year. Okay, you're saying in November of that year there are multiple reports of them pulling debris out of Ground Zero. And metal that they were pulling out, there are multiple independent contract reports of rivers of flowing molten steel that had been insulated by the crushed concrete and things like that. There was no way to ventilate that, so it was just a big insulator. We're talking about molten flowing. People have said they were flowing like lava, molten steel. They're pulling girders out a month after 9/11 that are dripping. That they're so hot. If not thermite, I don't know. I don't have an answer. I'm just asking, like, what could cause that? There are multiple reports of this. It's on video. There are video of this happening.
Okay.
How do you explain that away?
Okay, so I haven't seen videos, so shoot it to me, bro.
Okay.
But the other thing is, 2,800 degrees, what would that do to concrete?
It melts it.
For over several months, exactly. So why would it keep burning for several months underneath all this concrete? That doesn't really make sense.
Exactly.
Okay.
If thermite is not...
I'm saying, but you're saying it's liquid metal that's doing it.
Yes.
That has to heat to 2,800. Okay, so NIST said, and this was their hypothesis, right? We're kind of jumping all around here, but like there's photos of like this seemingly liquid stuff coming out of the sides of the building as it's been damaged, right? And it's orange, right? It's colored. It's not just gray. What NIST said, their hypothesis is that it's aluminum, liquid aluminum, which melts at a much lower temperature.
Okay, I agree with that.
Than steel.
I'm
right?
talking months after.
But I haven't seen this stuff, so I don't know.
I will show you. I'll show you the videos.
Show me. But I haven't heard this. But like. There's photos that conspiracy theorists say it's a bunch of firefighters standing around a bunch of molten iron, molten steel. It's not possible. They melt themselves if they were standing that close to ground.
That's not true.
Show me.
That's not true.
Okay.
I've been like, you're talking about the melting, like you're saying that they would melt themselves. I personally have been in a lava field in Hawaii.
Hawaii?
White privilege.
God damn.
You keep playing that white privilege card.
I've never been to Hawaii.
It, man.
Have you been to Hawaii, Paul?
No, I've not been to Hawaii.
I've been on a lava field in Hawaii, and you can be relatively, quote unquote, relatively close to molten rock.
Right.
How hot is
lava.
that? How hot is that?
You'll feel it, I'm sure.
2,000 to 2,500 degrees.
I've seen YouTubers next to them.
You can get within 15 feet.
Yeah.
And stand there for a while. Your shoes will not melt. They will not melt. I've walked on that. I've stood. I have a picture of me standing over a crack in lava, taking a picture of the lava flowing beneath it.
Nice. That's a nice picture right there, man.
A crack, you say?
Crack. Yeah.
A butt crack of lava.
Right.
So there is. Is it possible that the collapsed concrete caused an insulation effect? That
Sure.
Whatever. Is it? Yeah, sure. It has to be, because there's videos of them pulling out like almost molten steel girders that are red hot, dripping, white hot, dripping. They're pulling these things out months later. The fires underground didn't burn out until December of that year.
Right.
There's photo evidence of it snowing and firefighters and construction workers clearing debris, and it's still smoking. You can't argue against that. It's smoking. They're pulling out steel that's still hot in December. Like, where's the argument there? I'm not saying that thermite, whatever. I don't give a shit about that, because it could have been something else that brought down the towers.
But that's the only thing that could have liquefied the metal. Like, there's no explosion could have liquefied the iron in the core or the perimeter to do that. So you have to say, like, it can't. Even if you say there were bombs at every level, all 110 towers of the towers, it would not have liquefied metal. It's not hot enough.
Exactly. So what did it? That's what I'm saying. I'm just raising the questions. I don't have the answers.
Well,
I'm raising.
I mean,
I'm saying,
raise
I
another
don't know
question.
these pictures.
I'll raise another question.
I don't know this stuff.
Can I raise another question?
You can't have another beer.
No, well, no, I got one right here. But the WTC 7, we haven't harped on that yet.
We haven't harped on that at all
right now.
And I'm going to go...
So,
On that note,
I'm out of here.
World Trade Center 7 collapsed at near free fall speeds after fires
Due to debris, yes, from the other towers. Damn, you all right? Can you get out? No? Yeah.
Higgins needs to get behind me, so.
Studio. Studio legs, yes. So yes, damaged by fallen debris, then endures a fire that rages for hours. Experts say that this combination, not a demolition-style implosion, led to the roofline kink that signals World Trade Center 7's progressive collapse.
It was now, if you watch the videos of that, it collapses from the bottom to the top, just like a controlled demolition. It does. You can't argue with that.
Yes, you can. Don't say
here's the
these
deal.
things. You confuse people.
Okay, Ryan.
You confuse your dedicated fan base.
But here's another one. Like, we're talking about another coincidence for the first time in history. This is controlled by what they call a
This is the first
progressive
building.
fire is what they call it. Something
This
new.
is the first high-rise building
yet another
to be
one.
brought down by a progressive fire. Is what they call it.
And like you said,
But
so Tower 1 collapsed, and it sent debris flying out as the floors were pancaking on each other. And
they
some
were
of that-
not pancaking on. The official report says they did not pancake on each other.
Whose official report? Because there was
9/11
FEMA's, there was
commission.
NIST, there was 9/11
The
committee.
NIST report and
They're
the
supposed to be all
9/11 report
combined
both
together.
say that they did not pancake on each other. Because if they did, you would have whole floors towards the bottom. Because as each floor collapses, momentum is lost, energy is lost. Because energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. So energy is either transferred out or down. The energy levels do not add up. It would have pancake. You would have had whole floors at the bottom as that tower collapsed.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree. I don't agree with that the presupposition.
Okay.
So anyway, debris. What we can't agree on is debris from Tower 1 as it was falling down, spread out, damaged 7, right? And so NIST's official report is that the damage caused by 1, along with the fires that were caused by the damage, eventually led to the collapse several hours later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
7 hours later, yeah.
Yeah. And this was supported by the firefighters who evacuated the building and stopped. They stopped trying to look for I can't remember the technical term. Too many beers, but they stopped looking for. It stopped salvage trying to look for people, and they said this building's going to collapse. We got to get the hell out of here. The firefighters that were on the ground knew it was going to collapse, and that's why they got the hell out of there.
They knew it was going to collapse.
So they were in on it too.
Yep.
No,
the point where
that's
some
actually-
people have quoted
And no one has, and no one, not a single one of those firefighters has come through and coughed the beam.
I was going to bring it. You make a good point because
Hey man, if they're well paid,
conspiracy or not, that's a good point. Like, there's a lot of people that could be involved in this huge organization.
Hundreds of thousands of people.
Where are
man.
they at? Exactly. They can't all be silenced, right? Like they would say. But the thing is,
that's what I'm saying.
but
There's so many questions.
But the thing
I'm
is,
curious. What are you
yeah, anybody could say anything they want, but are they really going to fucking believe you? Even if you have proof. Honestly, really, it really comes down to that. Like, so I don't think if there, let's just say there is a conspiracy, it was an inside job, it's orchestrated by certain, people, whatever. Honestly, I don't think they're worried about anybody coming up with saying anything because anybody, they're just gonna think you're batshit crazy.
Exactly.
So they're not worried about it.
Anybody who says anything against the official narrative is a lunatic.
Exactly.
Oh, they're fucking crazy.
So-
They're conspiracy theorists.
But if you're a conspiracy theorist, whatever they say, you're going to believe. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? So,
Well, then that's
it's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
that's what I'm saying. Like the official narrative isn't telling us the whole truth.
Yeah.
Some of the conspiracy theories are extremely far fetched.
They draw their own conclusions, kind of.
Exactly.
big time.
There's a lot of things that happen. I don't think that World Trade Center 7 collapsed of it. Now, here's the thing. What the biggest thing that conspiracy theorists jump to is that World Trade Center 7 was the first building in the history of modern high-rise architecture buildings that collapsed due to progressive fires, right? That makes it stand out, doesn't it? Except the fact that it may have been the first, but it's not the last. It has happened 2 to 3 times after that due to known, proven progressive fires in different places around the world. There have been other buildings that have collapsed due to progressive fire. So, that being said...
In what kind of fashion?
dude, you got to Google it, man.
You've got
I
that. I don't know that there's videos of it. I
No,
haven't
there
looked
is.
at-
I've
Oh, is
Googled
there?
it. It's on YouTube, man.
Okay.
You can watch it. It's the Plasko building in Tehran, Iran,
Yeah.
Cool.
January 19th, 2017. You can.
Well, there's
look
your
it up
problem. It's building in Iran. It's probably shitty architecture.
right there. You son of a bitch.
You sound like Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero. He stands by his position.
And
Ultra Cliff.
Yeah, it's right there. No, yeah, I looked them up both, dude. It's right in that section.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah,
Huh?
dude,
Daddy Max.
it's that same pancake
Same
thing
pancake
where
style?
they're just going straight down,
down?
man.
Wow.
So
Absolutely,
here's the thing. Is it really that big of a coincidence that Larry Silverstein, one of the richest real estate developers in Manhattan, buys a 100-year lease on 2 buildings that are not commercially viable, takes out a multi-billion-dollar insurance policy against them, and less than 6 weeks later, they are demolished without the cost of having to the billions of dollars it would cost to demolish those buildings, and he walks away scot-free with $4.5 billion to build build a new building. That's all coincidence?
Oh no! So one of the things I completely agree with you is I think there's, and I don't know about Silverstein in particular, but I'm just saying in general, there's certain people who knew about it. They knew it was going to happen, and they hedged their bets. Whether it was investing in puts for United Americans or
There was a lot of short sells on American
there
Airlines.
were, and there's they've researched it, and there's technical explanations. But I'm not naive enough to not think that some people who knew it was going to happen bet on it,
Exactly.
and they made a killing on it.
Yeah.
So
right. So
sorry.
you looking at it?
Yeah, I am looking at it. The Plasko building collapsed. Yeah, it was on fire. It looks like it's been on fire for quite some time.
Yeah, it was.
The way it fell is the way I pictured a building on fire to fall. It does not fall the way WTC 7.
You liar.
Does it
No.
tilt?
Why would you lie to your?
No,
Does it-
look,
does
look-
it- does it
I
go
mean, by all
straight
means,
down,
my
or-
name's
I
Jake.
haven't looked at it.
Look at it.
Did you say my name is
Make your own
Jake?
No, my name.
opinions.
No, that's my opinion. My name is Jake.
Oh, okay.
That's my opinion.
I thought we forgot.
We all
that thing.
fucking know what your
Well,
name
I'm just
is.
saying. I'm just saying because like the WTC 7, it literally falls straight down. The Plasko building does fall, but it kind of like wobbles. And then it falls
Like
down.
it's
You know,
gonna
like how
drop,
I
yeah.
would assume a building on fire for so many
It
hours.
does a Ryan Landrum fall.
I'm using I'm using my data to pull this up.
Use
I
the
hope
data,
you
baby.
know I'm using it, man.
Why aren't you on my Wi-Fi?
Because you won't give me the password.
It's called Rob
Did you
is
ask?
gay.
Did
That's
you
the
ask
password.
for the password?
No, I didn't.
Rob is gay.
Don't give away my password in public.
You tell yourself you're gay.
Because he's a
The
bearded fuck.
password is Rob has a big dick.
Has
Then wakes up.
desired.
Has.
3
See,
inches
Paul
of a
agrees
dick.
with me.
Yeah,
More
I do.
than 3 inches
No,
off the floor.
and listen,
Off the floor. Yeah.
my personal opinion, I hope the government's not part of it. I hope. it is.
I
Yeah,
agree.
no,
because I mean I would hope that our government has more respect for its citizens than to do something like that.
What?
But
Am I against that? I mean, are you against
I don't know.
Oh, hold on, wait.
Okay.
Are we giving our final thoughts real quick? We're going around the table. Is that
Oh
what
yeah,
we're doing, or-
that's fine.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
We're
let's-
doing. It sounds like that's what we're going
I
for.
was
like,
just because he's against the Plasco building.
Oh,
that
we're
he thinks
still in
that
the Plasco building.
It's
I
like
see
the,
him.
the
Look at that
Get
fucking
into it.
pancake.
goddamn flapjack that motherfucker.
Listen, no, but it sways and then it falls down like the way a big ass structure would. I'm collapsing in my own footprint.
Yeah.
The WTC literally just kind of like I wouldn't
does
say
collapse in
free
its
fall
own free
motion
play.
because I'm not an engineer
Now
or physicist.
there are reports that there were firefighters, multiple accounts of upper level firefighters pulling people back. This building's coming down. This building's coming down. We have less than a minute, and there were accounts of countdowns that were down to the second from multiple people, multiple different places. That there were firefighters and other people that they didn't know what organization they were with, counting down 3, 2,
No,
1,
really?
explosions, and the building comes down.
How would these jabronis on the ground know that shit?
They were in on it.
Man.
They
How
were
would they
in
know
on it.
that?
The only way that you would
We're
know
going to tell
these-
Steve the exact time that the building's coming down so he can get people out of there.
Hey,
No,
you
make a
had
good
7.
point.
Look. You have 7 hours. You don't
An
think that
inch.
fucking Larry Silverstein could have got somebody in there to get some demolition blasts in there?
It's coming
Let me see it. I haven't fucking
Okay,
seen
okay.
it. Let me see it.
Well, you know the WTC the way.
okay, let me
I'm
see it.
gonna
Pull
show.
up that
one. I'm pulling up the other one.
All right,
I'll-
hold on.
Go
Let's
ahead.
do that shit off air.
I'm
Let's
sorry.
Okay.
No,
No,
Well,
this is
hold
key
on.
stuff.
Okay.
People can't see your videos.
Dude,
No, okay, well, no. Well, people didn't
post shit
listen.
so people can, like,
Okay, well, no.
Not this episode.
links.
we're
No,
not.
all right,
What
fair
can
enough.
what's
don't
the
blame
building
you.
called again so people can look it up?
Plasco building.
There-
Oh,
there's-
Plasco.
there's
Plasco.
two.
How do you spell that?
PLASCO.
Okay.
That's the one in
That's
Iran.
Iran, right?
Okay.
That's
Tehran.
Tehran, Iran.
Look that
Yeah.
up.
And then there-
Tehran, Iran. I think that's how you say it. Shit.
It's,
Goddamn,
it's
Rob.
Tehran.
Typical fucking-
Is it Tehran?
It's Tehran.
Oh, shit.
And then there's the Wilton Pace Dam.
I haven't seen that one
God,
yet.
I fucked that one up. It's
Goddamn beer.
W-
That beer got him.
WILTONPAESDE.
See, this one's collapsing. There's debris falling off
Exactly.
it all the time.
Right? It's not like the WTC was like a
It
perfect.
just went.
The structural
And free
integrity
fall.
of this
that's
building
the way
is shit.
That's the way I. That's the way I
It's
expect a burning
yeah.
building to fall.
Right. Not just.
It's not like all
Bloosh.
falling in its
Not
own
like you're
footprint,
dropping
like you
an
said.
ice cube in the
No,
fucking.
Okay, I understand. No, okay, right.
But the conjecture is that a building will, like, fall to the
No,
side.
no, that's not what
it's
it-
going to fall
No,
on
no, no,
itself.
no, 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 no.
But
Now hold on.
everything was-
Let the short guy talk.
Fuck you, man. I got longer legs than you. You know that.
Hey,
It's
Longer
just,
legs, longer dick.
Hey, baby, this all turns to dick at midnight.
it's just the way it fell. It looked. I could see some similarities to WTC 7, but it still doesn't. There's just. It's hard.
not as beautiful as WTC 7.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I hate
That's
to say.
fucked up.
I know it's fucked to say that, but that's.
It's a clean. It was a clean fall. That
clean
was
fall.
dirty.
Yeah, that was a dirty
That
fall.
was
There you go.
dirty.
There you
That's
go.
the best way. to explain it.
WT7 was a very
But that being
precise.
said, hey Ryan, that being
down.
said, I'm not saying I believe
See, bro,
that
look at that.
WT7
Jabroni.
was demolition,
That looks like it's.
but it just they.
fucking down.
But the way
Just
they
like
still
the
collapse
guy.
is still there's still a slight difference. Hey, I pay attention to detail. I seen his dick probably, and I
in
can
his
tell,
mouth. I mean,
I
really
can
close
tell the
up.
difference between Jacobs. Yeah, that's the sound. That's it.
So, final thoughts. My thoughts.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic. Anything's possible. It's either two things. They covered up because they really dropped the ball that day, or they're hiding something. I don't know. There's so many questions left unanswered.
There's too many questions, not enough answers.
There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
Ryan, your thoughts?
Anything's possible. Go ahead, Ryan.
God bless the USA.
Get the fuck
Yeah,
out.
baby.
How does an eagle?
Get the fuck out of here. Fucking bullshit.
All right, Paul, final thoughts.
Build that fucking wall,
Okay,
right?
well,
Yeah, build that fucking wall.
I know we're-
$6 billion.
I'm with Cliff. Build that fucking wall.
don't bring that up. Don't bring that up. There's, I know we don't have enough time, but I wish we kind of we did briefly mention there are some really, really crazy conspiracy theories too for this topic in particular. I'm just gonna name one real quick. There's people that go as far as to say those fucking planes were holograms. They weren't real.
Oh,
Yeah, that's fucking ridiculous.
Okay,
But my
I'm out
point,
on
okay,
that
going
one.
to my final thought. Yeah, I just had the intention, just simply questioning the 9/11 Commission report and just their narrative. It's very questionable. There's just there's just so much shit. I'm not saying it was an inside job, but like a lot of it just doesn't fucking make any sense, simply in common sense. But question, look it up, and just, I don't know, just have an open mind, but be skeptical at the same time. I know it's not so fucking contradicting, but don't take everything fucking. Yeah, do your research,
I got you.
man. Do your research.
So my 2 cents on the subject, my closing thoughts are to question the official narrative, because that is our job as American citizens. It is always our job to question the government and to make sure that the government is doing everything as the American people in our best interest. That is not always the case, and at this point in time, I don't know that it has been the case for any point in time. Whether the questions remain unanswered or the questions remain or the narrative remains the same, it is our job to question the official story until we get answers that satisfy, not even answers that satisfy us, until we get answers that are the truth. We as the American people deserve the truth. No matter how hard the narrative is to explain, no matter how hard the story is to tell, we as the American people deserve the truth. There are too many questions. There are too many possibilities of false stories and things like that. And I think that we, as the American people, if we roll over into complacency, that's when the American government, becomes complacent with us as citizens and takes and starts to take advantage of whatever they can. As long as there are people that are questioning the official narrative, that is when, as long as that movement is still alive, then the American dream is still alive. And that's what we need to have. We need to have people that question the official narrative and demand proof of the truth.
That's right, baby.
Right.
Well said.
That's like a Jerry
Beautiful.
Springer final thought.
Yeah.
I like
Very,
it.
maybe no Maury Povich, but yeah, Jerry Springer.
But yeah,
I think it's closer to Maury Povich than Jerry Springer.
we would not.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ryan. I'm sorry. Go
No, that's one of the beautiful things about America. God, it's so awesome.
I
We
know.
can do this.
We can say that, yeah.
We can do this.
No fucking consequences.
Yeah.
either.
Yeah, no consequence. Hold on, there's a knock at the door. Let me go.
Right. Bye, Rob.
Patriot Act. Patriot Act.
Yeah.
No, but we it's this
Yeah.
beautiful liberty we have to ask
Yeah,
these questions.
Exactly.
Yes.
We
Freedom.
ask the questions.
We can at least attempt to hold
We
the
can
government
have-
accountable
Exactly.
for what's going on.
And that's our
And it's
job.
awesome.
Yeah.
It is
That is
truly
our,
awesome.
And that is something that people need to make sure that they realize, that your government, your congressmen, your senators, your president, your Supreme Court justices, your judges, your police, they work for you.
And they can
you
all
pay their
give a
salary.
flying fuck about you.
The
There you
more
go.
you
Right?
question the official narrative of whatever it may be, whether you stopped at that stop sign or not, whether you had too many beers or not, whether those planes were drones, doesn't matter the question. Raise the question.
Yeah.
Always question the answers that they give
Good
you.
point, Rob. I like that.
Yep.
And with that note,
Definitely question our fucking, podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, with that note,
You
though,
can definitely tell how many beers deep we are as the podcast goes in.
we
This has been fun, man.
this was the
Thanks
new,
for coming
this,
out, Ryan, man.
Absolutely.
This was-
For sure, Ryan.
Man, I had
Yeah.
a blast. This is a
Yeah,
lot of fun,
we definitely
guys.
want to have you again for something else.
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Voice,
for
man.
sure.
Let's do it,
Let's
man.
We can
This
talk
is a lot
about
of
fucking
fun.
used
I don't-
condoms, whatever. It doesn't
we-
matter as long as
God.
your voice is around.
This-
We got to have you back, man.
So Ryan, and just for a little background, so people know who Ryan is.
well, before we get into Ryan, okay,
because we didn't even really introduce
I
Ryan.
understand that, but I mean, we're still talking about the 9/11. I just wanted to,
Are we?
yeah, I've been interrupted all fucking podcast, so I'm just trying to say that we would not forget about, because people died. It was just, this was
That's true.
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Okay, in this generation, people died, and we are sympathetic about it, and it is a very, very touchy subject.
And that's why we demand the truth.
Exactly. Yeah.
Those
Absolutely.
people that died and their families deserve the truth.
Absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
and just respects to the families that passed, and
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. There you go.
Cheers.
On to Ryan's
So we
introduction.
We didn't spend a whole lot. I should have done this at the beginning of the podcast, but
We're shitty.
Ryan and I have been friends for what, damn near 20 years, pretty close to it,
we were
maybe more than
14.
that.
How do you
14,
survive?
15 years
Yes,
old.
20.
How do you tolerate Rob? What's the secret?
There's
Oh, the
beers.
beer. Okay. God damn it.
Ryan is one of those friends that become family, kind of
Right.
thing. He is Ryan married my wife and I. Like, he didn't marry me and my wife, and this is not
Yeah,
Utah.
fucking polygamous.
He performed the ceremony.
That's what I got. Out
So Ryan
Gay and straight at the same
at
time.
the same time, baby.
That's not bisexual.
That's a saloon door. It swings both ways. So anyway, Ryan and I have known each other. We're like, he's my best friend. Like, we've been friends since we were 14, 15 years old. He performed the ceremony, married my wife and I. Jake and Paul, y'all were both there.
Yeah.
Ryan and I were in a band, a 90s alternative rock cover band, which was the best band ever.
The best name ever for sure.
Yeah, the Tommy Boys.
Oh yeah.
The Tommy Boys. It was the best.
Fuck yeah.
Better than
fucking
over the
great
line,
name.
but all right.
So I mean that's how Jake and Paul know Ryan, because we shared a rehearsal studio for a little while together. So I like to mix all these little facets of my life all together. And,
yeah.
Now Kilimanjaro,
And we can
the
see-
No,
adventure.
hey.
Did y'all talk about that?
Kilimanjaro, the Adventure.
Whoa.
That's a great fucking name.
I actually like that. I
That's
think
a
that's a
great
pretty
name.
cool name.
Paul's very
it's
sensitive
it's
about
called
it.
Really?
No, it's Kilimanjaro the Adventure.
Oh,
yeah.
it's
Kilimanjaro,
not the mouse.
I'm
Drop the
sorry,
mouse.
man.
Drop
I'm
the
the
mouse.
Adventure.
And then drop everything else after that because I fucking don't like it.
It's Kilimanjaro, the Adventure, and in the background, Toto's Africa is playing very softly.
Wait,
Anytime you talk about it, like, it's like in a movie. Like, when you ever say Kilimanjaro, the Adventure, just imagine Toto's Africa playing quietly in the background.
I do that generally anyway. So it works.
that's cool. I don't get tired of this song.
And
On
on
that
that note,
Fuck your nose.
before we close it out, we meant to hit this on the beginning of the podcast.
We
but
did. I don't know.
please, guys, if you like it, subscribe to our YouTube channels. Subscribe to our podcast channels on SoundCloud, Apple.
Yeah, we've got some great stuff
Spotify.
coming up on our YouTube channel.
Sure we
Absolutely.
do.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure we
So
do.
yeah, we're really expanding. We got Paul and Raph are got some good stuff planned up for our YouTube channel. We've got some collaborations with some other podcasts coming up that you're really going to want to be a part of. So subscribe to our YouTube channel so you get the notifications when it's up, because it's going to be fucking awesome.
It'll be great.
And buy your tickets to Comic Palooza as soon as they're available, because we're going to be there spreading our Gentleman No Class dick everywhere.
Oh,
And they are
fucking
available
way.
already right now. Go to
Are they?
comicpalooza.com and you can buy them right now.
All right.
But yeah.
All right, I'm hard already.
Awesome. And on that note, again, the third note,
Yeah.
The crescendo.
Several notes. Yes. Crescendo.
my name is Jake.
And he's Ryan.
I'm Ryan.
And I'm fucking Paul again.
And I'm Rob. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
All right. Good night.